masculinity debate. Are dating apps creating incels? Lonely men are more dangerous than ever. 2 hours.
We'll wait for a long time.
Can you watch it at a faster pace?
Fast?
Yeah, like maybe just a little bit.
What is a little bit?
Just like a slight, tiny bit. It don't gotta be like super duper.
Like 135?
Let's see that.
Critical conversation around truly the future of humanity.
But we don't like to talk about this. This report is absolutely shocking. This is a crisis and young men are struggling. So I sat down with 2 leading...
Okay. Before we start.
Like, what the fuck do you want my opinion on?
Yeah, no. You're taking control of this. So, whatever they say, because I already watched it already. And then I just want to have like a discussion with you. Because, we talk about a lot of, like, most of the topics a lot. So... And I seen them on like TikTok, and they're like you should watch this video with like your significant other, your friends or parents, or whatever. So I'm like, alright, this would be a perfect segment for us, only because you're also on dating apps, and you're also going through the crisis that, well, not the lonely man crisis, but so.
This is a critical conversation around truly the future of humanity.
But we don't like to talk about this. This report is absolutely shocking. This is a crisis and young men are struggling. So I sat down.
Love the video.
Do you think it's true?
I agree.
Do you agree with most of it or what?
About like 80%, yeah.
80%?
Correct.
Alright, I don't even know what it's about, so go ahead.
And with 2 leading voices on societal issues to discuss the rise of millions of lonely, addicted men. And the most important question is, how do we fix this? So let's start with this graph. It shows that young women are now out-earning young men.
It is true. We have given women so many tools to achieve, but now boys are being left behind.
And the number of males aged 16 to 24 who are not in education or employment has increased by a staggering 40%.
Yeah.
And the data I've seen is that when the woman in the relationship starts making more money, they become twice as likely to get divorced.
Because traditionally women seek partners who have more economic or social status than they do. And emotional intelligence is the new currency in dating. But these guys were raised not to be emotionally intelligent, but to be a provider.
That a lack of male involvement in kids' lives is a big factor leading to this. And once they lose a male role model, they become much more likely to engage in criminal activity.
And so we are just creating a lot of these angry young single men who are saying, well, this is rigged against me.
We actually had a massive audience to write in, and this guy Jeffrey wrote in and said, my entire life I've never felt like I was going. Like I could never...
Wait, that's already like a lot of information.
What's funny? Well, you over here keep laughing. What's funny?
There's already a lot of information, and you need to turn captions on, because I can never watch something without captions. Okay, that's already a lot of information and already interesting, because it's like, I think I saw something recently that said like when you get a master's, you're already like a good percentage of like not already getting a man. Something about that. You never like really understood the explanation, but it just makes sense. Like you already disqualify yourself a little bit more from the category of like the dating pool. So that's interesting to see.
Well, yeah, you're in a higher like educational bracket than the average person.
And then it's like, okay, it's only a minute in, and I already have a lot of thoughts.
That's why I wanted to start it like as soon as possible. It'll be a long time.
Just go. I'm not even gonna say anything yet.
No, say what you gotta say.
Go ahead.
Earn my place in society.
It's devastating. But something that's controversial I gotta push back on. I think the secret weapon for men that they don't leverage is to...
I want to hear a woman's perspective.
Honestly, what I would do is...
This has always blown my mind.
So they're getting a woman's
53% of you that listen to the show regularly haven't yet subscribed to the show. So could I ask you for a favour before we start? If you like the show and you like what we do here and you want to support us, the free, simple way that you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. And my commitment to you is if you do that, then I'll do everything in my power, me and my team, to make sure that this show is better for you every single week. We'll listen.
She's over here side-eyeing me because I give her a little nice little... And...
Stop fucking doing that.
And like... The side eye is just like to threaten me, but I don't really be scared because like you see me, you see her. All I gotta do is put in one of these and just
listen to your feedback. We'll find the guest that you want me to speak to, and we'll continue to do what we do. Thank you so much. Lost Boys. In March 2025, the Centre of Social Justice released this report which has sent a couple of shockwaves across the UK, especially across the media. And just to give you a little bit of a sort of preface and some context on what this report says, At the start of the report, Andy Cook, who's the
It's a
CEO
good
of the report...
pause. Just because.
Come pause it. I want you to pause it. Yeah, you pause it and we'll go from there.
Can you? I could just move.
What?
Okay, whatever.
What?
I am in grad school, so I will say that I be doing the research, like, you know, for homework. So I do love when people bring up statistics and stuff, because that's the real thing. Like, I don't really care to see what people say on social media. So, yeah, the fact that he's bringing up a report is cute. Let's see.
What says, we listen to those working on the front line, the teachers, the youth workers, the charities, and the parents who day in, day out see the struggles of young people. And in recent years, they've been telling us the same thing. Something is going on with our boys. And because of this, they wrote this report called Lost Boys, which looks at all of the different facets of why young men are struggling. And in this report, they say boys are struggling in education, they're more likely to take their own lives, they're finding it more difficult to find stable work, and far too often they're caught in crime. The numbers don't lie. Something has shifted, and we cannot ignore it any longer. It's not just about Andrew Tate or online influences. These are symptoms, not the cause. The deeper truth is that too many boys are growing up without the guidance, discipline, and purpose they need to survive. And there's some, frankly, horrific graphs, which actually sent the CEO of my company, a lady called Georgie, into quite an emotional state. She texted me and told me she was crying looking at some of these graphs, which we'll talk about today. But this is a subject that I know both of you know very, very well. So I'm keen to get into exactly why this is happening and what we can do about it. But to preface this discussion, to understand where you both come from and the perspective you have, Logan, who are you?
Yeah.
And what do you do?
I'm a behavioral scientist turned dating coach. So that means that I take all the lessons from the field of behavioral science, how we make decisions, and then I apply them to the field of relationship science, which is how love works. And so I'm really passionate about this topic because for a long time I've found that wherever I go, people say, oh, I know all these great single women. Do you know any great single guys? And I just thought, oh, okay, maybe that's always been happening. But when I actually dug into the data, I saw that we are truly in a dating crisis right now. And there is a huge mating gap between the type of men that women are looking for and the type of men that are available. This is a critical conversation around truly the future of humanity because marriage rates are down. That means birth rates are down. And so this conversation is extremely important.
And what sort of reference points do you draw upon? Because you've got some sort of unique access to data, right?
Right. So I work at Hinge for the last 5 years. And so I have access to tons of data there around how daters are dating now, how daters are dating differently, what sets successful daters apart. And then I also have conducted my own research for this conversation. So I sent out a survey to thousands of my newsletter subscribers, and people were very excited to talk about this. And I've conducted a lot of new research that I'll be sharing for the first time on this topic.
So I make my living looking at data and trying to come up with insights. I spend most of my career looking at data to try and add shareholder value, and then I have the luxury now of focusing on things I'm really interested in. And I just stumbled upon data about that reflects that the cohort that has ascended fastest globally is women. And this is a wonderful thing and a huge collective victory. And the group that has fallen furthest fastest is men in Western markets. And the data was just so overwhelming. And also, I was close to being
that's kind of laughable. Just a tiny little bit because, I mean, haven't we been growing up with this idea that men were, like, the leaders in every single damn aspect? Correct. And, like, women weren't even allowed to, like, you know, you couldn't even open a bank account at 1975 if you were a woman. Which is kind of crazy because my mom was born in 1973. So she couldn't even open a bank account when she was born at the time. So to just kind of hear that, like, they're falling behind and we're kind of progressing now, I don't know, like, I think that's kind of crazy. I mean, I get it. Like, he keeps saying, like, you know, now everybody's falling more susceptible to crime, and I think you could definitely see that in a place here, like, in New York City, where we saying, like, oh, the YNs are outside. You could see that everybody's a little bit more resorting to, like, the street life and all that bullshit, but I mean, who are we really to fault? Like, they also say the discipline factor. But it's like, the men who do have, like, the father figures at home and, like, have these mentors and stuff, they don't even listen to them a lot of the times. It's like, I feel like they only listen to them sometimes. It's either if they've been there from, like, they were really young, or, like, if something bad happens. It's when things, like, really start, like, okay, I see where real life is at. I'm gonna start listening a little bit more. So it's like, who are we really to blame? Like, is it just society, or is it just, like, the individual too? Which are the men?
I would say first is like the individual, just because of just the simple fact of their upbringing. Because you, like I said again, you can have a father, and you can have not a father, and I feel like the ones that don't have a father, well, the ones that do have a father, they either listen or they don't listen, but most of them feel like they shouldn't listen, and then the ones that with no father, they just have no guidance, so they look up to like gangs as a way of guidance, so they look up to like this person, and this person might not steer them in the right direction, so they end up just fending for their own selves.
Okay. I do have a thought, but I'm gonna let it play a little bit longer. No.
Run the thought.
I feel like, okay, like, I'm trying to think, like, if I was a boy growing up, too. Because, you know, for girls, it's always different, and I've always said that, like, it's just a different standard. But there are, like, ways for you to get guidance from the right people instead of, let's say, a gang. You may not know where the resources are, but, like, if you ask, they're definitely there. Like, people just don't, I guess, what's the word for that? Take advantage of it. But they're definitely there. They're very much present. Yeah,
but you also gotta factor in your environment, too. Because you there is opportunities to take, but you might say a person growing up in, let's say we say Baldwin, Long Island, versus like 40 projects. It's a whole different environment, and it's just they see a little two different aspects of life. So it's like
just
this one might,
thing.
yeah.
Okay.
One of these men. I didn't have a lot of economic or romantic prospects when I was a young man, but there were programs and an environment where I could be successful. And I worry that some of the temptations of technology, the economic trends, had they been where they are now then, I could have very easily ended up a statistic. So I just sort of relate to these problems.
I'm keen to understand from your perspectives, what you think like the first domino that falls in a young man's life or a young boy's life that causes the outcomes we're talking about today. Like, where is the first place to start?
So the research I've looked at, and Richard Reeves from American Institute of Boys and Men has done good research here, the point of failure, if you reverse engineered issues to, is when a boy loses a male role model. And that is, in the U.S., we have the second most single-family parent homes behind Sweden. And what's interesting is that in single-parent homes, girls actually have similar outcomes, similar rates of high school attendance, income, rates of self-harm. Boys, once they lose a male role model, become much more likely to be incarcerated, engage in criminal activity, harm themselves. It ends up that while being physically stronger, boys are emotionally and mentally much weaker. So the loss of a male role model is, I would argue, kind of the first point of failure that predicts that a boy is going to struggle. And that has impacts on family court, economic policy, and just general zeitgeist in our society, where men need to step up. If we want better men, we need to be better men. We need to step into that void.
Another one that Richard Reeves talks about is that there's not enough men in the education system.
100%.
So I believe
How is that even possible? If that's the case, then we're already in a bad position as of today.
Why so?
We already have shitty men. It's already here. Like, it's not evitable. So if, like, we are trying to build better men, it's gonna be hard with the fucking men that we have today.
Why do you think we have shitty men?
I mean, if we're really gonna, like, it's just gonna be a consistent cycle. Everybody's consistently gonna say, like, oh yeah, it was because of my father, or because I didn't have a father, and blah 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 blah. And then it's just gonna keep going in the same fucking cycle, blah 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 blah. Okay, so now what are we gonna do? Like, what's the solution? Okay, we gotta find a role model. Who's the role model? It gotta be a man. Okay, we already have a limited amount of men who are, like, probably, they already just said it, like, it's a limited amount of men that are, like, being successful at what they're doing. So
I think that's why you should seek the guidance of, like, whatever you want to do. So for example, if you want to be in business, you should seek a mentor that's in business, that's successful in business, and he could take you on his wing.
I mean, but that's out there already.
Yeah,
like,
but people don't use that resource.
So how are you gonna force a hand to take what's out there for them to grab?
I ain't forcing nobody. It's your own willpower. If you want to be better in life for this generation and the next upcoming generation, whether you create one or not, you gotta do what you gotta do.
It's very a difficult predicament if you really think about it. Men are already weaker standpoint. It's kind of crazy. And a lot of men won't admit that. They swear it's always a woman. He's bringing up research, which is my favorite thing to hear from somebody. Studies.
You would like my moderator.
And Waltz was a teacher.
Research.
1 out of 3 teachers in his school was a man, but now it's like
we love that.
Yeah.
And so, where do kids spend most of their time? In school, and who's teaching them? Mostly not men.
And you think, well, women can be fantastic teachers, and it's
Right.
true. But after school programs, not as many coaches. They typically are male. Not as much compensation, so they don't get rewarded for being coaches. And if you just think about it logically, who does a teacher champion? A teacher champions someone that reminds them of themselves when they were a kid. So, and also just look at there's incredible bias, I would argue, against males in school. A boy is twice as likely to be suspended on a behavior adjusted basis, twice as likely to be suspended for the exact same infraction as a girl, 5 times as likely if it's a black boy. And so, and once you're suspended twice, it probably means you're not going to college. In addition, look at the behaviors we promote in school.
No, said he's not lying.
Oh, yeah, I believe it too. Unfortunately,
Cool.
it's true.
Be a pleaser. Be organized. Raise your hand. You basically just described a girl. And so, and also, quite frankly, a lot of the jobs that require
don't like that, though.
tertiary education attainment, there's more women now in law school and medical school, and quite frankly,
And what
good
the
for
fuck
them.
do you mean
They're
by
just
that?
better at that. They're better students. They deserve to make more money. They deserve it. But the reality is, it has huge ramifications when we no longer have wood, auto, or metal shop. They've gone away.
Right.
So those used to be a path to decent middle-class jobs. They've been replaced by computer science. And so what are the paths for the 2/3 of males that aren't going to end up with a traditional liberal arts college degree?
Right, and just to add a few more stats to that, so we know that 70% of valedictorians in the U.S. are female, and women are much more likely to be in the top 10% of their class. But then on the SAT, men and women, or young men and women, earn the same scores. So there's definitely something happening in schools that is prioritizing the female experience, or that women are better at that. We definitely want to celebrate the success of women. I think the changes that have happened over the last 50 years are incredible, and I feel like I'm a beneficiary of that, and so is my daughter. If you look at all of the books that my daughter was given when she was born, they're about great women in history, you can be anything, dream big, little one. And so I feel like we have given women so many tools to achieve, and in many ways those have been manifested, but now boys are being left behind, and so this isn't a zero-sum game.
I
was
don't
nervous
really
about
agree
coming
with
on.
that. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, do you not agree with that?
I don't think well, we're also talking about a white woman on the screen. Like, I don't think I saw a lot of womanly based things growing up. Like, none of the books or whatever the fuck. Like I just said, looking back on everything, it was always like men were always in the dominated spaces. Everything was always male dominated. Even the field that I'm in now studying, like, it's male dominated. It's very few the amount of women who are in my program, nonetheless of color. So I don't know about all that, but continue.
On here because I thought people would say she's a male apologist, she doesn't see how much women are still struggling. I think everyone is struggling. I think life is hard.
Yeah.
But what's happening right now is we need to have empathy for young men, and we need to bring them up, because this isn't just a problem about young men, and patriarchy doesn't just hurt women. A lot of people think about the patriarchy as something that prizes men and hurts women. But when there's a very narrow definition of men, everyone is hurt by that. And that's all the research that I've done, is over and over seeing women feel like they are not enough good men to date, and men feel like they're being held to a ridiculous standard of holding both sides of the coin, being feminine and masculine.
It turns out, as you were speaking, I was looking at the stats around fatherless homes, and it turns out that there has been a significant increase in the amount of young boys being raised without a father present. About 25% live without a biological step or adoptive father, according to the National Fatherhood Initiative. In the US has the world's highest rate of children living in a single-parent household, and 92% of the time that's with the mother alone. And in 1968, only 11% of children lived with only their mother, compared to 21% in 2020. So that's doubled in the last 50-odd years, which is pretty staggering. And then obviously the consequence of that, as Scott described, is that individuals from father-absent homes were 300% more likely to carry drugs, to carry guns, to deal drugs, and there's this huge plethora of mental health consequences if you don't have a father in the home. I mean, what do we do about that? And like, where are the fathers?
Yeah.
Where are the role? Where are they going?
Well, it's complicated. There's male abandonment. There's just no getting around it. But also going back to family court, sometimes the courts in the our economy make it difficult for a man to stay involved in the kids' lives. And also, family court's getting better at saying, all right, the kids. I mean, just a personal anecdote. I have a friend who recently has gone through divorce, 2 daughters. Very much wants to be involved in their lives. They're 13 and 15-year-old girls, and quite frankly, dad's there on the weekends, and they got their own thing going on. And they don't necessarily make dad a priority. And dad's not around for what I call the garbage time. And that is what I found with my boys is the moments of serendipity and connection happen randomly. When you're taking them to school, when you're out in the back, jumping around or playing whatever it is, these garbage moments. And when you're not in the household, for whatever reason, there isn't that much garbage time. And I think slowly but surely they lose sometimes connection with their kid. There's something weird going on. I'm curious, Logan, if you've got data on this, but you have a 1-year-old daughter, right? You're going to be amazed when my unfortunate boy had a Halloween party. And the boys are like cute, they're dopes, they're boys. There's some 14-year-old girls who look like they could be the junior senator from Pennsylvania. They're 5'10", they're articulate. Yeah. Hello, Mr. Galloway, how are you? What a lovely home. The boys are like, I don't know. And biologically, girls mature faster. Mm-hmm. Their prefrontal cortex is 18 months ahead of the boys. An 18-year-old woman is competing against a 16-and-a-half-year-old when she's competing against an 18-year-old. And they're even finding that it's getting worse, that women or girls are starting to menstruate earlier and boys' testicles are descending later. So the gap in maturity, biological gap, they think might even be growing. They don't know if it's pesticides. But when I meet my 8th graders' colleagues, there's a huge difference between between the boys and the girls. Yeah. And one of Richard's suggestions is that we redshirt boys, that we hold them a year back. The boys start kindergarten at 6, whereas girls start at 5.
So the research in the UK shows that 70% of girls are ready to start school at age 5, but many fewer boys are capable of starting at that age in terms of readiness. And so if you were to hold boys back, then they might be on more equal playing field for those critical moments of 4 to 5, of 13 to 14, where the brains really develop at a different stage.
I want to talk about that sort of early education experience and how it can be adapted, but also just like if the environment of the classroom is right for boys. As we're talking about the point about fatherlessness as well, I found this graph, which is also pretty shocking. And it goes into something you said, Scott. It basically showed...
Main effect of all later absence. By sex. Male, no absence. Interesting. Female. Interesting. Okay. Go.
That the absence of a father on a boy causes depressive symptoms, but the absence of a father on a young girl doesn't cause the same depressive symptoms, which means that the absence of a father for a boy drastically increases their chance of being depressed, whereas if for a girl it doesn't.
There's a lot of other graphs that look like that in terms of women and young girls are just actually a lot more resilient in childhood. So if you are in foster care as a young woman, you have less negative outcomes than young men. And so there's this theory in parenting of, is your child an orchid or a dandelion? And so the orchid really needs very particular situations to grow. They need a certain amount of light. They need to be watered in a particular way, and they'll thrive in some situations, and they will not thrive in others. Whereas a dandelion can really survive in many situations. And so women, young girls, tend to be more dandelions in childhood. And so that's why when you have a boy and a girl both in negative situations, the boy is more negatively impacted.
Well,
boys are just weaker.
I will also say that I feel like girls are also just held to a different standard. That's why we kind of just blossom in a different way than boys. I feel like boys aren't held as much of a standard than girls. Like, I don't know. When you're young, you're kind of expected to be a certain way, do certain things. And boys are kind of just let to do whatever at that age instead. And maybe that could be a key as to why there's such a difference. But I don't think it's just because we blossom to blossom, because we're just resilient. Like, that's a dub. But I'm going to let her talk.
Both in negative situations, the boy is more negatively impacted.
Boys are just weaker. There's a crazy stat I read that 2 15-year-olds, a boy and a girl, both sexually molested. And to be clear, they're equally heinous crimes. But the boy who's sexually molested is 6 to 10 times more likely to kill himself later in life. It ends up that boys are just less resilient.
You tell me why. Why is that?
I just feel like when it comes down to that, the light is not shined upon us men more than you guys. So like, if a woman is sexually assaulted versus a man is sexually assaulted, it's like they more care about the woman. And you know, there's been men where they got sexually assaulted when they're younger by a family member, a cousin, a teacher, whatever it is, and it's just like they really have nobody to talk to, so they gotta keep it to themselves. Mm-hmm. Versus like with you women, it's like, yeah, there might be some women that don't have anybody to talk to as well, but they give you guys a safe space to just open up to talk about it more.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's necessarily still a safe space to talk about that stuff, even in a woman's world. Mm-hmm. I feel like today, at least, there is more of a platform for men to feel comfortable talking about if that stuff happens to them. And we've even seen, like, there was a recent, like, I think, I hope I'm not mistaken, but I think it was YG. He recently came out with, like, a video where he, like, mentioned that, like, that happened to him when he was younger, or in, like, a music video. So, like, the platform is definitely there, but I think it's just more the idea of being shunned upon. Like, I think boys are scared because they simply don't want to, like, have this idea of, like, oh, like, my masculinity has been stripped away from me. Like, that your masculinity is still there. That doesn't make you any less of a person. You're still a victim. But I think it's just that idea of shame. That idea of shame that doesn't make any of them want to speak up. But I don't think it's comfortable for women. Women still be ashamed to talk about that shit even, like, years after that shit happened. So I think it's just a stigma.
I could also add on and say that us guys we're so closed off, because I feel like the moment you show any type of, like, emotion, the girl, and I think they're gonna talk about it too, but the girl starts to feel like you're weak, and they don't want to seem like they're weak. So, like I said again, they have to hold it inside and on the side until, like, it's like too much to bear. And you might as well just off it up, because it's just what else.
I kind of got that too. Like, I think what the hell did she say? She said something. I mean, like, yeah, the expectations do be on us girls, but, like, I get the expectation that don't be on men of, like, having to be the leader and having to be the provider. Like, everybody says, like, I think I told you, like, on a random voice note someday, like, you know, sometimes the dude ain't got it. Like, you have to be okay with knowing, like, okay, I could hold it down sometimes. Like, I don't know. I feel like as a woman, like, you should be able to, like, be okay with that. Like, it's okay for it to happen to a man. Like, it doesn't always just have to happen to women. But again, the stigma is, like, it eats the man up.
Yeah.
And I get it. So, I don't know. We'll continue.
Do you think there's somehow more of a stigma there? Like, I wonder why that's
shame,
so
they
dramatic.
can't talk about it.
Hello, like,
feel
right on the money.
I mean, I think just until a few years ago, the social incentives were to never speak about it.
Right.
I was on Lewis Howe's podcast.
We love a bitch
and he
in
just openly
academia.
said, I was sexually abused as a child. And it was so shocking for me.
Wow.
To hear this big, handsome guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have said it 10 or 20 years ago. I think people would have assumed that it was his fault. It made him less of a man. So I think a lot of that has hopefully gotten better. But we just have to acknowledge boys.
No, because wait. I'm a little lit right now, so don't mind me. But I am definitely starting to feel liquor. But for real, like, hello? Only a bitch who's in school could really, like, read shit like that to you before it's even said.
I can tell you, stop looking at there. Look up there.
I gotta look at myself because I just look so cute. Like, the hair looks good today. It's tea. But okay, I'm gonna try to look over there.
Mentally and emotionally are weaker than girls.
Lewis House didn't admit that until a couple of years ago.
Is that right?
So he's lived with that his whole life, and
Wow.
it wasn't until he was, I think, having dysfunctional relationships and a few other things had happened that he decided he wanted to say it publicly for the first time, which again feeds into your point. We actually asked some of our audience to write in, and one of the people that wrote in was a teacher in a primary/preschool, and she said to me, she was an anonymous teacher in Germany, and she says, every year it seems like more and more children, always boys, have this new energy to destroy the classroom dynamics. These boys almost always have two things in common: a lack of boundaries at home and unsupervised or limited access to all kinds of content on the internet, e.g. porn. Their perception of what is okay and what is right becomes completely distorted. I have tried so many things, and every year it's becoming an even bigger challenge.
Just a side note, I do think that is a problem. Just in general nowadays, like there's no way to keep the kids away from like content that we don't want them to see. Like the technology is just advancing way more than from like even when we were growing up, unfortunately. Like let's say when we were 10, can you have imagined having a setup like this?
Yeah.
Can you?
Mm-hmm.
Advanced camera, you could have been streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody from the world could see you.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I wouldn't.
Because at 10 years old, I used to be playing the game with people from like Kansas, like and like grown ass men, dude. Like they'll come to the mic and they'd be like, "What's good, little nigga?" And I'm like, "Damn, like you."
What game was this?
Modern Warfare 3. It's like a Call of Duty game.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a girl, so I wasn't into all the gaming stuff. I couldn't have imagined.
And these are just like monitors. Like the monitors been out for the longest. You can just monitors, the game system.
But the streaming.
Well, I can see that.
The worldwide thing.
That probably been there for the longest though. It's just somebody had to just.
People getting rich off of that in a snap of a finger.
Well.
I don't think I would have imagined that.
It's a part of social media. It's a part of content creating. It's part of being an influencer. That's the new currency.
Let's see what happens 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Young boys in school. So one proposal is to delay education for boys, put them in education later. Is the classroom itself a problem? Like the sitting in school, listening to someone speak at you. Someone proposed to me in this podcast before that boys need more sort of practical play, and the classroom is designed for that. I wasn't sure if that was...
Well, in single-sex boys school,
and then
they end up with double the amount of recess time. And that is different.
That one to be the full film, and then
Why they gotta see my face?
You don't have to. I just do that to make clips.
If they have, I equate boys to dogs. A happy dog is a tired dog, and if it's not tired, if it doesn't get to run, it's going to cause trouble. And I feel the same way about boys. So in these schools where they decide what's best for the boys, there's usually more exercise and more free play and more roughhousing, co-ed schools. And you're also seeing, I think, with boys, I mean, there's just by even acknowledging that men play a critical role in boys' lives a few years ago, that was seen as sexist. What you're saying moms can't do this? And I can just tell you there are certain moments when my partner needs me to weigh in. I don't know, it's the depth of my voice, my physical size, the way they relate to me, the fact that I'm not, you need dad. Or that's what I found, especially with boys. They need almost like that not physical intimidation, but it's almost like they begin tuning out their mom over time. I mean, they're incredibly close to the mother. They look to her for nurturing. When they really have a problem, I find to go to mom. But they will constantly test the boundaries.
How do you feel about that?
What?
The whole mom thing.
What about it?
Can you go back a second? Yeah.
There are certain moments, now seeing, I think with boys, I mean, there's just, by even acknowledging that men play a critical role in boys' lives a few years ago, that was seen as sexist. You're saying moms can't do this?
This part.
And I can just tell you there are certain moments when my partner needs me to weigh in. I don't know, it's the depth of my voice, my physical size, the way they relate to me, the fact that I'm not, you need dad. Or that's what I found, especially with boys. They need almost like that not physical intimidation, but it's almost like they begin tuning out their mom over time. I mean, they're incredibly close to the mother. They look to her for nurturing. When they really have a problem, I find to go.
Do you feel like that?
Yeah, it sounds so bad when I was younger. Because my mother didn't really hold on weight. She's a lady at the end of the day. And she holds weight, of course, but at the same time, it's just like, my pop's not around, so who's going to punish me? You know what I'm saying?
But do you feel like she didn't hold weight because that was just the type of person she was, or it was because she was late?
I can say both. Like, she's lady,
Okay.
and that's not the type of person she was. Well, my mother used to beat me like a lot, actually. Like,
She what?
She used to beat me a lot.
Like with what?
Whatever's in her.
Do you feel like that worked?
Yeah,
That intimidated you?
I mean, it intimidated me so much that I call was it CPS on her or
Really?
ASP, whatever the fuck it's called.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I think you come home every day. You got 4:30 curfew. You come home and she's beating you because you go over 4:31. Nigga, that's what?
So why didn't that make you fall in line?
Because
you got over it at some point.
Yeah, and I'm rebellious. So I do what the fuck I want to do.
So what would be the difference between a man doing that and a lady?
Well, come here. If my pops was to like hit me, it'd have been like a different situation. Like he means business. Like it's strictly business only. Versus like my mother. My mother like she's a nurturer, so like she would hit me and then like, oh, you want something to eat?
That's crazy.
You want?
I mean, I get that part.
Versus my pops. My pops would like beat me and like the nigga wouldn't even talk to me until the rest of the week. Or like.
So you feel like that's what she should have done? Would that have made you feel different if she just didn't talk to you for the week and didn't feed you any food?
Yeah, because I probably just
would have learned.
Yeah, exactly. I would have learned like right from wrong.
I think that's so unfortunate.
Why?
I mean, I don't know. I think that's just, I guess, the woman's side to us. I don't know. I got the whole part of like having to beat a kid sometimes and like not nurture them, but I feel like, I don't know. That's your kid. You should want to nurture them.
So you're saying my pop should have nurtured me after he beat me?
I mean, it's not like, oh, let me come hold you here and coddle you like a baby, but it's like, I don't know, I'm not gonna let you go fucking starve either.
I mean,
I don't know.
Punishment, bro. Caribbean people are different.
I get it. I don't know. I'm gonna let it play.
But they will constantly test the boundaries.
I don't know.
Constantly. And I think a lot of single mothers, quite frankly, boys, just can't keep a lid on that kid. They can't control the kid. So, and I think you're finding at schools when there's no male kind of, I don't know, involvement or that I don't know, what I'll call physical presence.
Really.
And then you add on.
I think this is changing nowadays, though. I will say there's a lot of more men, especially black men, which I love to see. They're like out here more in like the mentorship roles, the teacher roles. At least that's what I've seen from TikTok. Yeah. The other day I actually like ran into some page on Instagram where it's like a black boy leadership program based in Atlanta. Warmed my heart to see. So it's definitely like it's coming out more if it wasn't out here already.
This dopa machine that they get used to squeezing a dopa bag 100 times a day as they need it, and then you take the dopa bag away, they're just more prone to emotional outbursts. I'm curious if you've done any research around why that is that emotional outburst more common among boys than girls.
Hey business owner, tired of wasting hours on scheduling, attendance, and payroll? Connecting's here to simplify all of that for you. With Connecting's auto scheduling, your schedules practically fill themselves, handling conflicts.
I haven't done that research, but I am imagining that there's moms out there that are raising boys on their own, and they might be like, yes, it is hard, but what do I do?
Right.
And so for that boy who isn't taught by a lot of guys in school and isn't in the Boy Scouts, which doesn't exist anymore, or doesn't have big brother, big sisters, like, what does that mom do?
So with that, you talk about Boy Scouts. In America, there's Scouts for America,
right.
And it can be boys and girls.
Right.
But Girl Scouts have their own single
Yeah.
sex. But Boy Scouts aren't allowed to have their own
Right.
single sex. So the questions are, what do you do? And I think that we need a societal zeitgeist that says immediately, if there's no longer a male involved, we have to get other men involved and acknowledge that that's not being sexist, that's important that you get men involved. And I think, so I came from a single parent household, raised in a single immigrant mother who lived in Dutch Secretary, light of my life. As soon as my dad was gone, and then he had to move away for work, she got other men involved in my life. And I had wonderful men involved in my life. I was a stockbroker. Neighbor down the hall came in with his girlfriend and said, "Do you want to go horseback riding?" He said, "Me horseback riding." I don't know if men would be comfortable doing that. in today's age. So getting men involved in their lives, after school programs.
So how are we supposed to get more men?
I had a lot of wonderful men. I used to go camping with, you know.
If men are uncomfortable doing these mentorship things, then how are we supposed to get more men? And then it's like, all right, go to therapy then, so you can heal that, and then go to do mentorship. But then you get the men that say, I don't want to go to therapy. What am I going to therapy for?
What am I going to therapy for? You can't help me, bro.
I need you to watch. What is that show called? It's on Netflix. And there's like a couple episodes where there's a man who literally starts going to therapy. And then you come back to me and tell me how you feel about those episodes.
Can you send me a Netflix platform? I'll watch it.
Because niggas say, I don't need to go to therapy. You always need somebody to talk to and express yourself to. And a different perspective to get from.
2.
These walls
3,
don't talk back to
4,
you.
5.
These walls do not talk back to you.
Shit, they talk back to me.
They shouldn't be. If they do, there's something wrong.
You know, and there were men everywhere involved in my life, and I worked at a lot of those institutions.
Yeah.
And also, there's a reticence and a hesitance for men to get involved in a boy's life that isn't theirs, for fear they're going to be perceived as something's wrong with them.
I was thinking that. So if we have less men in the home,
that's the thing. Nothing is wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong in being vulnerable. There's nothing wrong in, like, you went through shit in life. Like, it happens to us too. It happens to everybody. We all go through shit. I think there's beauty in being vulnerable and telling people about what you went through in life, because there's literally somebody out there who relates just same story to you. There's actually a dude that I talked to not too long ago, like, you know, on a talking level, whatever the hell. And I told him that I used to go, well, I still do go to events where, like, you know, you randomly talk to people about, like, life. There's this one event in, it's not just in New York City, but they go, like, around everywhere. Soul Ties. And it's like this little game where you ask people questions. That's the game I was talking to you that I wanted to play with you. You ask people questions, and it's, like, based, I guess, on, like, you know, life events. And at the event, you get to go with the microphone, and you say your answer to whatever the question was. And that man told me I could never go up there and tell people about my life story. Mind you, he's like 27. There's nothing wrong in going up to telling people who don't fucking know you. They're strangers, by the way. It might be a little bit scary, but there's nothing wrong in going to tell people, like, hey, like, yeah, this was a hard time in my life, and I got this lesson from it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know what's the shame behind men going up and telling them a vulnerable thing that happened to them. I think there's beauty in that. But people have a hard time accepting it.
Children. And then we go to school, and the stat says that 72% of teachers in middle school are women as well. There's no men at school either. It's no wonder that boys are struggling so severely at such a young, early age, for so many reasons, because one would assume that they're being socialised in the same way as girls. I've got a mother at home, don't have a father. I've got women at school, don't have male teachers. I mean, that's a controversial thing to say. I'm sure it used to be, but I think people are waking up a little bit now.
We need more male teachers. There's more female fighter pilots per capita than male kindergarten teachers. There's an absence. There are some boys, not some. There are millions of boys in America whose first male role model is a prison guard, and there are just no men in their lives. After school programs being canceled, no women, very very few men K through 12. Dad's not around. There are literally communities. You read articles about it, where it's like, where are the men?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Where are they?
Online.
Doesn't look like they're in work. They're not in college.
The reality is, there just aren't, for a lot of reasons, a host of reasons, a lack of male involvement in kids' lives is a big factor. I mean, there are other factors, there's socioeconomic factors, there's biological factors, there's a lack of vocational training, there's outsourcing of many of the jobs that make a man's path to middle class viable. I mean, you want to talk about the UK, the big problem is the lack of growth. Yeah. There's not a lot of income opportunities for a young man who's not exceptional. And what we've seen in the US is essentially, if you look at our economic policies in college, it's never been better to be remarkable. Like, if you're in the top 10%, if you're a high school class, you're going to make more money than the top 10% did 10, 20, 30. You end up at Google, you're going to make a kid at Google who's amazing, computer science degree, can make millions of dollars by the time they're 30. But I can prove to every one of us, mathematically, that 99% of our children are not in the top 1%. And our economic policies have basically said that school and college is meant to identify a superclass of 1%ers that we're going to try and turn into billionaires, instead of figuring out the infrastructure and the programs to ensure the bottom 90 have a shot at being in the top 10. And one of the stats is just around college acceptance. When I applied to UCLA, the acceptance rate was 76%. Now it's 9%. I was unremarkable for whatever reason, prefrontal cortex, single mother, whatever you want to call it. But back then they had the mission and the charge to let in unremarkable kids. And that's no longer the case because America's superpowers are optimism. And we all believe our kids in that top 1%. And the reality is they're not. Or people think, I like an economy where you can make $1 billion because that's going to be me one day. So they have ignored the fact that we are crowding more and more prosperity and opportunity into the remarkable. And for me, it comes down to what do we want in America and UK? Do we want a superclass of billionaires, or do we want a society and an operating system that gives unremarkable people a shot at being in the top 10%? It's become winner take all. And we have purposely created a set of economic and educational policies that crowd a massive amount of prosperity in the top 1%. And we have opted for it because we believe we have a shot at being in that top 1%.
I love that because I think the winner takes all applies to a lot of different things. So I bet the top 10% of Americans now are healthier than they've ever been, while the rest of the country has never been healthier.
Best healthcare in the world if you're in the top 10%.
Yeah. Or in marriages, the top marriages today are the best marriages of all time, yet we have declining marriage rates. So we're nearing the lowest rate of marriage that we've ever had in American history. So most people or fewer people are getting married, but if you're, 2 college graduates who get married in your 30s, you might have an even stronger bond than people in the past. But that is a small group at the top.
I feel like
marriage has become a luxury.
Right now.
If you're in the top quintile of income earning households, you're 75% get married. If you're in the bottom quintile, only 20. If you're in the lower quintile of income earning men, only 1 in 4 chance of getting married.
And this has huge impact on our society because we know that married people are healthier, they're wealthier, they live longer. When couples are married, they actually have lower rates of child poverty. And so this has huge implications for our society if we're having fewer marriages, especially when you think about having fewer babies.
I want to get into dating and marriage and love and all those things. One of the things that really shocked me as I was preparing for this conversation was this graph, because this isn't the narrative that we hear. Can you both see this one? This is the reverse gender gap.
Oh yeah.
Gender pay.
Male.
Supposed to be in the motherfucking lab right now.
I do not believe this. Well, this is for the UK, so we don't know.
There you go, graph.
Right.
And it shows that young women have outnumbered young men. That's not what I heard. In terms of if I log onto social media, we've been trying to fight the gender pay gap, but to see that young men are now falling behind, both in education, both in unemployment. Young men face higher unemployment, nearly twice the rate of women. Looking at the early developmental stats, this graph was horrifying. I actually couldn't believe that was true. That young boys are struggling so much in education, but then to see also that it's reflected in...
So that graph shows that boys aged 16 to 24 are making 10% less in full-time employment than women. And so it is true that we're seeing a reverse income graph. But what we do need to talk about is even when women make more in their 20s, that changes around age 30.
They have kids.
When they have kids, right? It's like this meteorite hits, and there's this huge burden placed on women. And I think that's a big part of the conversation that we'll talk about when we talk about dating, is women still feel like they have to have, do all the household chores and raise the kids, but suddenly they have to earn a full-time income too. And so many of the gender roles are changing. And so, yes, that graph is true. We have seen since 2020 that there's a shift, but I don't want to just say, oh, women are making more in perpetuity, because as soon as there's kids involved, they pay a price.
You said that women feel the need to then also earn a career and all those things. Where did that come from?
Well, there's this idea of hypergamy. So traditionally, women seek partners who have more economic or social status than they do. And for most of human history, this worked because men had the resources. And so there was sort of this arrangement where women could often marry someone who's more educated or earn more. But over the last 50 years, that's really changed. And so what I'm seeing in my work, working one-on-one with women, is that when they say that there aren't enough good guys to go around, that's actually true. So we now have this huge mating gap where we have these high-performing, high-earning women that have done the work and gone to therapy and work out, and they're ready for their great partner, but they're not able to find enough guys who are available. And if this is a problem now with the women I work with in their 30s, we are going to be facing a much more severe crisis 10, 15 years from now. So currently 60% of college enrollment is women, but soon it's going to be, for every 2 women that graduate, it'll be 1 man. So that means half of those women will not have a guy who graduated from college. And so this is a crisis because these women are saying, okay, if you cannot be the provider, then you need to be offering more. Emotional intelligence is the new currency in dating. But these guys were raised not to be emotionally intelligent, not to give emotional support, but to be a provider. And so they've been chasing this lion. I'm going to hunt for this lion of being a provider. But suddenly they're told you need to hunt for a tiger, which is emotional intelligence. They don't have the skills to do that. And so women have raised the bar in terms of what they need from men, while men are continuously falling behind.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's some nuance on the pavement. So the data I've seen is that women under the age of 30 in urban areas are now making more money. But to your point, the moment they have kids, where corporate America has really failed is it hasn't figured out a way to maintain a woman's professional trajectory once she decides to deploy her ovaries and have kids. And there's some data saying, okay, 2/3 of divorce can be reverse engineered to the man starting to make less money. If when the woman in the relationship starts making more money, they become twice as likely to get divorced, 3 times as likely to use ED drugs because the guy loses a sense of purpose and self-esteem. What gets lost in that data is the reality is if a woman is stepping up and stepping into the economic void and being more economically, being a greater economic contributor, then logically it would make sense that men need to step up logistically. And I think what a lot of women are saying is like, okay, I'm not getting anything. You're no longer a provider, and by the way, you haven't filled that void. You haven't made up the delta. So there's some nuancing around it. What also I think is important to say is that if women are better students and showing the discipline and the skills to go to college and an information economy and making more money, then okay, good on them. Just as for whatever reason men made more money, maybe it wasn't fair, but it's not a crime against humanity if women have the skills to make more money. What happens though is the second order effects that you're talking about, and that is, we don't like to talk about this, 75% of women say that economic viability is hugely important to make. Only 25% of men. For men, it's not a criteria. For women, it is. And Chris Williamson of the Modern Wisdom podcast, he has this great stat, or he calls it the high heels effect. And that is 50% of women say they won't date a man shorter than them. I'm curious what you think, but I think it's more like 80%. I think it's embarrassing to say. It's just instinctively, women feel like they'll be vulnerable during gestation, and they want someone they think physically could protect them. I just think it's hardwired into me, but they don't know it. Women, metaphorically, are getting taller every year. And women made horizontally and up, and men horizontally and down. Right. And when the pool of horizontal and up keeps shrinking, they just have... So this notion, a ton of great women, where are the men? Or there's no men? There's a lot of men, just not men they want to date.
Right.
And then you speedball it with the guys who are in the top 10% can engage in portion.
I don't think necessarily it's about, like, men you don't want to date. Like, all right, let's be for real. In a world where there's, like, a man who, like, has every single quality that I want, and then he's, like, 5'8", I'm going to make the exception. But that's me personally. I know that maybe another woman won't think like that. She'll be like, no, like, fuck out of here. You gotta be 6 foot and above. But me personally, it's like, not everybody's gonna have the exact... Not everybody's gonna have everything you want to a T. But not also are you gonna have everything to a T. So it's like, you can't think like that. But again, that's me. I know everybody's not as open-minded as me.
So why do you think women on 6 foot and above? What is the so...
I mean, he did have a good point. This idea of, like, you just have, I guess, women just having great, like, oh, we want to protect her. We want somebody who could, like, fend somebody off, I guess.
So you're saying you're going to base his protective skills off of his height because he's taller?
I mean, not height, but, like, let's think about, like, in an ideal, because it's true, a movie or whatever the case. What do you see? It's usually a brolic ass nigga who's pretty big and tall.
But he's... That doesn't mean anything, though.
But it's... I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Movies. He get hit with one hit, one left, one right, one kick, and he's done.
But people create delusions off of these things. You will not believe the amount of things that make an impact on you that you see every day. And it could just be from what you watch. You start creating these false realities that do not happen in real life. And it's not just women. It's men too. And it could be from fucking porn. You create these false delusions that are simply not real.
What are these false delusions that men are making from the...
A pretty fucking perfect little fucking coochie. That's not fucking real. That's not real. Just like... You think a big old brolic man could fend off 1,000 niggas for you? That could probably not be fucking real. But we just create this false sense of reality. It's just what we do as humans. And especially now that technology is emerging like fucking crazy. Yeah. Everything we watch, of course, we're gonna fucking feed off them delusions. We're dumb. Clearly.
Polygamy. They can get a date every goddamn night, which does not encourage long-term or very good behavior. So the guys they all want are not incented to enter into long-term relationships, and the bottom half of men are literally shut out of the mating market. And we always kind of, and this goes to your bailiwick, kind of portraying men as the predators and the idiots, and they just got their act together. There's something strange going on in that is online dating. When a woman can go out with a guy, a high-status male, and I'll put forward this thesis, and I want you to respond to it. She can have sex with him, which gives her the impression that's her weight class for a relationship, but he's not interested in a relationship. And then she basically decides the bottom 90 are no longer in her weight class. And you can't tell a woman to lower her expectations, but the reality is, and what the data I've seen on dating apps, is that all of the women want the same few guys, and they shut out the rest.
Yeah, okay, so there's a few things I'll respond to there. So one, going back to the income graph, I want to just call out that, yes, right now in a few urban markets, women are making more than men. So women in DC and New York under 30 are making more than men on average, but in most situations, men are still making more than women, but we're talking about a projection. Going back to the dating research. So yes, it's exactly as you described. What we have right now is there's fewer and fewer men that are hypergamous mates for women. So if there's a much smaller pool of guys, then what you have is you have a bunch of women competing for the same men, and then a bunch of guys get ignored. But what I also see is that those top guys are having a hard time deciding. So I feel like in my coaching practice as a dating coach, I'm working with a lot of women who say, what do I do? I've changed my profile the way you said I should. I took your class, but I still feel like there's just not enough great guys. And then I work with these CEO men who are having such a hard time choosing. And so I think we really have this exacerbated problem where so many women are competing for the same men, and then a bunch of guys are getting ignored. And then what ends up happening is, where do those guys go? And they go online. That's what you see.
They go to porn.
They go to porn, or they go to Reddit. I mean, I love Reddit, but they're really going to some of these red-pilled communities. And so what you're seeing now is just men really opting out of society. So when you go back to that stat, 1 in 7 young men in the UK is NEET, not in employment, education, or training. They have just opted out. And as Scott says, there's nothing scarier than a single man, a young single man. And so we are just creating a lot of these angry young single men who are saying, well, this is rigged against me. And so that's why I am worried about the rise of people like Andrew Tate. And if we wonder where are the dads, where are the men, well, men are finding these father figures, but they're finding them online, and they're not the father figures that I would choose for the majority of men. And so I'm really worried about this, because I feel like women are saying, guys, you need to step up because I can provide and I don't need that from you. And guys are not prepared to rise to the occasion.
What are women looking for? Scott talked about height.
Yeah. So I would say...
That's interesting.
What are women looking for? What are you looking for?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of the things they said is like, yeah, from the typical woman. I mean, I wouldn't say that, like, oh, yeah, because of this, 90% of the men are immediately fucking excluded from my dating pool. Like, I don't know. Like they said, the whole thing about, like, providing, I don't think it's about, like, if I get to a point where I could provide for myself, sure, you can provide for me. Do whatever the fuck you want. But it's like, I guess it just comes to the emotional part. But then you can't fulfill the emotional part because you did, all of these things happened to you in the past. So it's like, I don't really know. What are we looking for at this point?
Me? You ask me the question?
Yeah.
Or you're... I mean, I'm looking...
What do you think we're looking for?
Oh.
You as a man. Riddle me that.
In this society, I think you guys are just looking for like a provider. What provider as in like someone that could really like hold shit down, in the sense of like, if you open the store today and you say you want this, he could buy it right there in the spot. If you want to go on this vacation tomorrow and you want him to book all these the trip and the hotel, he could buy that tomorrow. And I feel like that's not it is realistic in certain men, but not the average men. So then when you're like she said, or what he said, they want this specific category, and if they don't have this specific category, the other specific category that's below them, they just don't get looked upon. Mm-hmm. And that's your average man that's working a 9 to 5, or that's just came out of college with his degree and doesn't know what he wants to do with life, and his degree's not helping him in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Theoretically, I get it. A regular woman would probably say no, but me, been there and done that plenty of times as myself.
And then like the height thing too also matters, because she like an individual could say like I'll thug it out if you're not making that much money, but then like you're not making that much money and you're short. No, it's just like. That's why I'll be confused on what y'all have this obsession with the 6 foot and above thing. Like, I don't know. But if that's what y'all like, then that's what y'all like. Can't knock it.
I don't know how I feel about that. Because it's like, okay, let's say you're not making enough money, and you're short. Mm-hmm. But we always have a good time together. You're emotionally supportive. You're always rooting for me. We always go to do some things once in a while, even if it's just to go have a picnic at a fucking park. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't I keep you there? Like, that's still a man of quality to me. But again, another woman would probably say no. So.
Yeah, but you're different though. I've been telling you that a lot. You're different from the typical woman in this society, especially like in New York.
I just don't think. Like, that part is just not realistic to me. Because if it could happen to us as a lady, why do you think a man is safe from that part? Just because he's a man. If you could lose a job tomorrow because you're a woman, so could a man. What makes him any different? And you know what I mean?
Elaborate a little bit more on that.
Let's say if it was a woman who was short and didn't have a job. Would you leave her tomorrow?
I like short women. The no job might rub me off a little bit.
Well, let's say she was tall and she had a job. And she didn't have a job. Or let's say she was, I don't know.
For me, the height doesn't really matter. It's just... Okay, so if she doesn't have a job, and what is she doing? Is she in school?
She's doing nothing.
Fuck no. That's like the bitch I told you about. Hell no.
Or maybe she's looking for a job but can't find one as of right now.
She's doing nothing. Like, that's a punk bitch right there. Okay, how much times are you applying to jobs?
Let's say I'm doing 10 to 20 per day.
Not enough.
I'm going through a really hard time. I'm like depressed. I'm falling out in some aspects. What are you going to do? But you know that this isn't me. It's just because I don't have a job right now.
I'll tell you, Joe.
So it's like, I don't see why I wouldn't do the same.
Like, prior to you not having a job, but you was on your shit.
Yeah. Like, everything was literally Cinderella's story.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Joe. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad. I'll tell you, Joe.
Okay.
Now, you saying like she has no job in general. Like, yeah, fuck no. I don't know. I'm good.
Okay. I got pee.
On the brightest of sides, I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna edit this shit, to be honest. Cause I edit a certain way, and like, I could do it the certain way that I normally do it, but at the same time, it's like she's here, so it's like a different vibe. You feel me? Shout out to that perfect water, but I feel like I have an idea. How I'm gonna edit it. Actually, since I brought that idea, let me go. I'm probably gonna stay up tonight and just edit. Honestly. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I be tripping. I be on one. Why are you taking pictures in the land? You own one.
Say, I work at Hinge, but I do think that apps have perpetuated this issue around height, because if you can set your height filter to something, then you might set it higher, and then it's as if you have the dating app as a club, and you're literally having bouncers that prevent a bunch of guys from even getting into the club. So many women in the US set their height filters at 6 feet, but only 14% of men in the US are 6 feet or taller. So what happens to the other 86% of men?
14% is crazy. I mean, 14% is pretty. It's still a big number.
You just did the stats earlier today.
Yeah, 14% is still a big number. But 14% of men in the whole U.S. is kind of fucking nuts. Like, damn. What happened to the growth spurts? Whatever. 86% of men, yeah. Alright, I'm gonna reduce that shit a little bit. I'll accept like a 5'9" king or something.
Yeah, hear it first. She said she gonna accept a 5'9" king. So if you 5'9", y'all better send in your application. See, you know, a real nigga like me looking out for y'all. You feel me?
And women are saying, where's my guy? It's like, well, he's not even showing up on your app. And so a huge thing that I push women to do is to change their height filters and just say, there is nothing that proves that you're going to have a successful long-term relationship if the guy is higher. I'm married to a short king. I love it. I feel like I really found this gem. And I think that so many women are missing out on great potential partners because of things like that.
Scott's point as well about they will date one of the men in the 30%.
Yeah.
Sleep with him potentially, and then that kind of adjusts their standards and they expect all of the men to meet that standard, but there isn't enough men to meet that standard.
I haven't specifically heard that. I mean, there is a lot of evidence around assortive mating that people sort of have an internal sense of how attractive they are and that they end up with someone similar to that. But assortive mating is different than hypergamy, which is really this idea, as Scott said, that women tend to date horizontally and up and men date horizontally and down. So if you have 2/3 of women who are college grads and 1/3 of college grads who are men, and some of them are going to date women without college degrees, you truly do have this dating crisis where there's just not enough men to meet this hypergamous mating.
Again, you can't tell women to lower their expectations, but this is the reality. When you ask a man, if you could have a woman...
I don't know. I feel like we can lower our expectations just a tad bit. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, like, yeah, I'm about to be out here with another degree. Props to me. But I don't think, like, oh yeah, I expect to meet a man tomorrow that has a master's degree too. Like, it's just not realistic. I mean, you're looking at the fucking data. Like, it's just not there. It's not there. I mean, like, I just want a nigga to be smart, even if you have a high school degree. Like, show me that you know that what's going on in the world or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? You don't have to have a grad degree too. School is not for everybody. That's another thing that we also have to put in account. Just because he may not like to go to school and I did, that doesn't make him less of a fucking candidate for me. You know? So I don't know. I think we could lower our expectations just a little bit. Continue.
Women who had 80% of everything you wanted, 75% say, yeah, I'm on board.
Mm-hmm.
When you say to a woman, a man has 80% of what you want, 75% say that's not enough. But if you, but even look at the media.
Right.
What does the media tell a woman to do? He's out, but he didn't open your door. He's not nice to his parent. You walk right out on that man. Like every piece of media is, you don't need him. You're a strong, independent woman. Pull the ripcord. You're out. And it is the basic kind of communication around this is, you are a strong, independent, powerful woman. That is wonderful. And quite frankly, you don't need the imperfect man. And they're just not connecting. I read that on Tinder, a man of average attractiveness has to swipe right 200 times to get one coffee, and then 4 of those 5 coffees will ghost him. They will decide they don't want to meet him, or they won't show up. That means a guy of average attractiveness has to swipe right 1,000 times to get one coffee.
That way for me. What the fuck? If anything, a nigga ghosts me. What do you mean? What the fuck? We learned that from y'all.
We didn't learn nothing from no us. Y'all started first. Y'all just be randomly ghosting instead of being upfront and be like, yo, you ain't my vibe. I ain't really fuck with it. I ain't feeling the vibe no more. I found somebody new. I got a new boyfriend. It's that simple. That's all you gotta do is just communicate instead of just disappearing. And now, a nigga like me don't care if you ghost me. I do the same thing. Then I just ghost a bitch all the day.
I don't know, man. Me personally, again, because everybody's different, I feel like I didn't ghost men. I think men started ghosting me first, and then that's when I kind of started like saying, I'm like, oh, okay, this is like a normal thing that people do. So I started doing it to people, but I don't really like doing that. It don't even feel right. You kind of just, I'd rather just tell a nigga, like, we not fucking with each other.
Yeah.
Go find the love of your life. She's out there.
Somewhere.
So, I don't know. Continue.
Now, what does that tell that guy? Women don't value me. Women make me feel rejected. And then they go online and they see these misogynists telling them it's not your fault. And these men become much more prone to misogynistic content, much more prone to nationalistic content, blaming other people for the lack of economic opportunity. Yeah. They start sequestering from society. I worry that we are literally evolving a new species of asexual, asocial male. And if a man by the age of 30 hasn't either lived with someone or married someone, there's a 1 in 3 chance he's going to have a substance abuse problem.
Wow.
In addition, it goes so much deeper than that.
But it's like, okay, where does the root of all of this come back down to? The failure of a male presence in your life. So who the fuck is the real problem here? Is it really us or is it y'all?
Yeah.
How is it us?
You picked them wrong.
Oh, that is so tough. But why is there why is there men that are wrong out here? Because it all becomes, okay, root to the cycle. There wasn't a strong male presence at home. So is it really us or is it really you?
Yeah. And then it stems to us.
So how do we divide from picking the right man or the wrong man?
Stop having kids at a young age. Shit happens, of course.
Well, that's already happening because in our day and age.
And there's a lot of single. You go on Instagram. Oh, I'm a girl mom. I'm a boy mom. And where's the father? The father's nowhere to be found. And that's another kid growing up without a father.
I'm still failing to realize where a woman is the counterpart in this problem.
Yeah, picking him wrong.
But you keep saying you picking him wrong. But okay, what was the problem with that man?
That's for you to figure out.
Was it not the man? Because the mom was there. But the man wasn't.
And that.
So is it not the fucking man? And then you have the men.
But it's a cycle though. It starts like from the woman picking them wrong. You have the kid with the.
This is a problem nowadays.
You have the kid with the man.
This whole misogynistic view of it's the woman's fault. It's the woman's fault. It's the woman. We're still failing to realize that the whole root of the problem was also the fucking man.
Yeah, it's in both parties.
But you just said it was a woman
I'm telling
first.
you, no, exactly.
You failed to
exactly.
You failed to account for it. It was a man first. It should have been the man out of your mouth.
Why
first,
is it the man first?
Before the woman.
Why is it the man first?
Because that's the root of the issue. If we're saying the man is failing to be at home.
Okay.
Man is failing to stay at home.
Okay.
What does a woman have to do with that?
You're picking them wrong.
Well, what do I have to do that your parents treated you wrong? It was your father that treated you wrong. Maybe I'm over here trying to help you and heal you. You still failing to realize that part. Maybe I decided, okay, I want to have a kid with you because you fed me this whole delusional part that, okay, maybe I am healing. Maybe I do want to change. Maybe I want to have a kid. Maybe that'll change me.
Then you have the kid.
And then you realize you can't be that father.
Yeah, exactly. So then that's another kid.
Because you have all of this trauma from your fucking father that made you realize I can't be the man that I want to be for my fucking son or my fucking daughter. How is that my fault? I'm still going to be there for the child regardless because I'm the nurturer. I'm the mother. I'm going to be like, yeah, that's my kid no matter what. I gave birth to this kid. Correct. I had them in my stomach for 9 months.
Correct.
Whether the dad is there regardless or not, I have to be there. How is that my fault?
You still picked them wrong. You should never pick that nigga. What if
And then you raise your child. Okay, now let's say you have a daughter. And you teach them, okay, you don't pick this man. And then they end up having a child with that man who fed them all this delusion again and whatever. And then 20 years he realizes that, I started to realize that, yeah, my dad did this to me. He fucking beat me when I was a kid and I don't want to do that no more. I don't want to take care of the child no more. You still telling your daughter that that's her fault for picking that man? You did everything you could in your power to avoid her from picking the wrong man. But he just fucked that shit up for you.
You know, that's why...
and that's her fault?
Listen, that's why... back in the days, they used to say, like, before, I think... well, I don't know if it's you get married or you have a child, or just dating a woman in general, the guy will have to go to the father for approval. And if the father says no, the father says no. So, in that case, I would want my daughter to come to me for approval because I already know how I am as a man, and I already know how men are out there in this world. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you might love him dandy up and down, but I still would want you to come to me for approval and let me course him and see if he's the right man for you.
Okay. Now let me tell you this.
Talk to me.
If you were my dad, I wouldn't want that.
Why not?
I'm telling you, even nowadays, I feel like that's just like a tradition of the past. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's maybe more cultural or whatever, subjective to wherever you're from. But like, for women, that's kind of like dehumanizing. I'm not gonna lie. From my perspective, like, I wouldn't mind you, like, meeting my dad or whatever the case. It would be nice if, like, you know, it was, like, old times. Like, let me ask for his hand before I ask for yours. But, like, me, I have to bring this man and introduce him to my father before I decide to do anything with him. It's like, I need your approval first before I do anything with my life. Like, I can't trust my instinct enough that I have to gain your approval first. Mm-hmm. It again revolves back to the idea of like you need a man's approval. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a little bit dehumanizing for a woman. I don't know. I feel like times have just changed from that. I don't think it's wrong for a father to meet a man, you know, before they get married or whatever and spend time together. I think that still should happen, but I don't know about the whole, like, you need to come to me first type of thing. Like that. I don't know about that. I feel like if you raise that lady right, she should trust her instincts enough to know who's right and wrong for her. Again, not seeing where the woman fits in here. Kind of all still goes back to the man's fault. But, you know, It's always going to be our fault no matter
if
what.
they don't develop the skills, the reason romantic comedies are 2 hours, not 15 minutes, is this shit is hard. Mm-hmm. Like finding an attractive, intelligent woman, generally speaking, 75% of people who've been married longer than 30 years say, in the beginning, one was much more interested than the other. And it was almost always the man. Women are much choosier. The basis of evolution is seed trying to get everywhere, men, and women deploying a much finer filter to select the strongest, smartest, and fastest speed. So men need an environment to demonstrate excellence. And you hear these women talk about it. He was kind. He was good at work. I like the way he smelled. He was funny. Where do men demonstrate excellence? When they're not going to college, they're not going into an office because of remote work. Where do they have, they're not going to church, they're not going to temple. Where does a woman have the opportunity to fall in love? Other than these baseline metrics, and you were talking about, women say, you've seen these TikToks, over $100,000, that's not unreasonable, and over 6 feet, that's 2.2% of the male population. So where do they fall in love? Where can a man demonstrate excellence? It used to be go to temple, 7 single women, 7 single men, and they kind of pair it off and work it out. And online dating, similar to online e-commerce, online rentals, it's created a winner-take most, if not all, environment. And it's basically been amazing for attractive guys, attractive wealthy guys, tall wealthy guys. It's been amazing for them. For all the other guys, it's been a disaster, and it's made it mildly shittier for every woman. The digitization of mating, I believe, has been a disaster. It's been bad for women. It's been disastrous for men.
I want to talk about how the genders seem to be separating in a lot of important ways. We know from research around political affiliation that women are now, on average, 30% more liberal than men. So they are definitely experiencing political polarization. Then, for the first time in history, more men are attending church than women. And when I started this research, I really came at it from this point of, is it just me or there are not as many eligible guys? But when I dug into this, I found that both genders really feel misunderstood. And so I asked men and women who has more power in relationships. So equal amounts, men and women said, oh, we have the same amount of power, 42% of that. But then what was so interesting is that 46% of men said women have more power, and 46% of women said men have more power. So there's this huge feeling of, oh, the other gender has all of this power. And when I spoke to people, I want to tell you about 3 dating paradoxes that I saw. So the first dating paradox for men is this idea that now that women are providers and do not need a man to take care of them financially, they really want guys to step up with emotional support. But here's the paradox. They were not raised and they don't know how to give that emotional support or emotional availability. So we know women, even if they have the same number of friends as guys, the women are talking to their friends much more often. Women speak to their kids, even starting at a very young age. They use more emotional language with their daughters and their sons. So constantly we have this feeling where we're asking men to do something when they don't have the skills. I was talking to my friend David, and he said women are in graduate school when it comes to emotional conversations, and guys are in 3rd grade. The other part of the paradox is that women are asking men to be more emotionally open, but then they get shamed when they do that. So we have this great quote from Brene Brown where she says, we beg guys to open up, we beg them to let us in, and then when they do, we can't stomach it. And I heard that over and over in my research. There's this quote where a guy says, a woman would rather see me die on the white horse than fall off of it. And so there's a sense that I have to be perfect, I have to be the masculine and the feminine, but I don't have the skills to do that. And women say that they want these guys to be emotional, but as soon as they show emotionality, it can freak those women out. So one guy that I spoke to for this said, I went on a few dates with this woman. At some point I told her that my mom had had a suicide attempt. And the next day she texted me and said, I'm sorry, I can't see you. I cannot process your emotional trauma for you.
Oh, girl,
and so guys are getting a lot of mixed messages. We want you to be feminine. We want you to support us. But when you do, it freaks us out. And so we don't want that. And digging into the research, and I want to look into this more, I think it's that a lot of women want emotional support. They want you to support them in their emotional journeys, kind of but they're not as ready to have you open up in your emotional journey.
I prefer to take someone to just
aspect I don't agree on. BTW. Like, that's kind of like stupid. City girls
in
down.
Marketing, we call it consumer dissonance. What people say they want, and then what they actually buy. And what women say they want is an emotionally in touch man, and what they want is a masculine man. And that they will articulate what they want in a man, and includes being more emotionally available, and then they want to have sex with a traditional masculine man. And what I hear from a lot of, and this is anecdotal evidence, and it's false marketing, and you tell me what the data says, but there's just so many single women in my age group, and it feels like there's literally no men in my age group. As bad as it is for people in their 20s and 30s, try being a woman in your 50s trying to date, right? And they tell me the same thing. These are liberal, progressive, educated women. They say, I like a manly man.
Yeah.
And they say it under their breath. So there's what supposedly is stated around, I need more emotional availability, someone who's touch with their feelings. But what the research shows is they want a guy with facial hair, who's still, women are still very attracted to traditional masculine attributes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just in such a hard moment because you have women who are saying, I don't want to date a guy who earns less than me. And you might think, okay, well, the data hasn't caught up with the dating. If more women are in higher education and more women are earning more, then maybe you're going to be the one who earns more in your relationship. But what they feel like is projecting out, I'm going to end up doing most of the housework, most of the childcare. I might as well get a guy that can contribute financially. So they don't want to change their expectations around that. And so I think we truly are in a moment where women are being asked to do more masculine things and men are being asked to do more feminine things. And I think a lot of that is progress, but it also seems to be creating a lot of confusion in the dating world.
Yeah, it's true. I was just thinking, I coach a lot of young men, and occasionally women ask me for dating advice, and you coach, it sounds like a lot of both. And first thing I say to men is I ask them, like, would you want to have sex with you? Right? Are you in shape? What do you look like naked? Do you have a plan? You don't have to be rich now, but do you have a plan? Right? Have you found means of being confident? Can you demonstrate kindness and excellence across anything? And the only advice I give women is second coffee. And that is, maybe it wasn't great. I mean, if you don't like the guy and you're just like turned off, fine. But if it was just okay, maybe give it a second coffee.
I have a chapter in my book called Make the Second Date the Default.
Yeah.
And it's really because I feel like I won the lottery with my husband, but he is somebody that takes longer to open up, and he's this slow burn. We met in college, we met again 7 years later, then we were friends for a year, and I feel like he's this incredible partner, husband, father, but I don't know that if we'd met just randomly on the first date that I would have gone on the second date. And so I think people really do need to train themselves to look for these slow burns.
Logan, Scott said something there about what he thinks women want, which is these sort of traditional masculine features. Is this what you see in the data?
What's hard is I think Scott's right about what people say they want versus stated versus revealed preferences. So according to the research that I did, women are saying the number one thing that they're looking for is kindness and compassion. That's also what men are saying that they're looking for. So in many ways, this is great. People are looking for the same things, but I just feel like there's these huge disconnects now where people don't feel like they can get what they want.
Men are saying they want kindness and compassion.
I made them say, what are all the things that you care about? And then what is the number one thing that you care about? And kindness and compassion was first for both of them.
Interesting.
The stuff I've seen, or the stuff I've read is that for women, and I've talked to men about this, number one is they have to signal resources. And we don't like to say it out loud. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a Range Rover and a pound right now, but you have a plan, right? You have your shit together. You go home at midnight when everyone's partying because you have to be up for work. You work out, which shows a level of discipline and that you can commit to something. You're in school. You've got a good job. This person is going to have resources. And I don't think that's changed a whole lot. I think a man's ability to signal future resources has gone down. I'm not sure it's become any less of a criteria. Number two is intellect. And it's very instinctual because if you make good decisions for the tribe, your kids are more likely to survive. Someone who's smart is more likely to take care of your offspring than someone who's stupid. What's interesting, and I love this, is the fastest way to communicate intellect is humor. And I joke, and this is bad, but I say, this is my impression of a woman. I'm laughing, I'm naked. And that is, I've always thought if a guy can make a woman laugh, she will date him. And then the third thing, and this is where guys screw up. This is what I tell a guy's secret weapon is. It's kindness. Women want to see that you are a good person. You treat service staff well. You're good to your parents. You have manners. You treat people well even with no reciprocal expectation.
It's not that hard,
because they know that a kind person, if and when she's vulnerable and needs help and maybe isn't bringing as much to the table for certain periods of time, that this is a kind man. And, sure, you want to do your best to signal resources and have a plan. Sure. Maybe you're smart, maybe you aren't. There's not a lot you can do there. But the secret weapon, I think, for men that they don't leverage, and I do think it's a practice, is to demonstrate kindness. And we don't talk about that enough as men. It's like, well, okay, and it's little things.
It's that
have
easy,
good manners.
quite frankly.
Be thoughtful. Follow up with people. And I think that, anyways, those are the three things that I have read women want.
That's the easiest advice you could give in a
Okay, there's so much there. So one is I do think we need a new definition for modern masculinity or mature masculinity or evolved masculinity. And I think that that's why this moment feels so painful is that we don't have it. Because I agree with you. I don't think women are saying, I want a feminine man. I think they want a modern masculine man. And so that means somebody who is decisive and can provide, but also somebody who's able to communicate with them emotionally. And so one of the suggestions that I came here today to talk about is this idea of men's groups. So about a year ago, my friend David Clavins, who happens to be a world-class magician, came to my husband and said, I'm going to form this men's group. And so it's about 6 or 7 men, and they meet together monthly, and they have they have formed this council of peers. So every month that they get together, every guy sits down with Post-it notes and says the 2 issues that are most pressing for him. So first of all, I think that that's a great way of doing it because it's actually that time to say, what am I struggling with? I think many people in their lives, maybe especially men, don't sit there and say, what's top of mind for me? So guys get the quiet time to do that. Then they go around in a circle, and whoever has the most pressing issue.
The resources are there. click on that shit.
They get to take their time. And some men might say, you know, these are top of mind for me, but it's not a priority. I'll give the time to someone else. And each month, they talk about what's going on for them. They hold each other accountable. So month 3, they might say, hey, David, you've been talking about that for the last 3 months. Are you going to actually do anything about it? And I love that these men have a masculine space to actually go through what's going on for them. Because maybe they have wives and girlfriends they can go to. Maybe they don't. But I think it's a different...
Might be a good idea. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? A place where men could just talk about men's stuff. That's not good enough. I'll be sending you a link again soon, and I hope you take advantage of it because it is free.
Type of advice that you get from a council of trusted peers. And I really do think that men's groups will change a lot of these issues, because I can sit here and say everybody should be in therapy. Guess what? Therapy is really expensive, and many insurance companies will not provide it, or there's a huge waiting list. And so if we just sit around for all these guys to go to therapy, that's not going to happen. But men's groups are a way.
There are resources out here, people. Don't let people lie to you. There is free therapy places, and you can get therapy at a discounted rate nowadays. Myself included, I do too.
That men can lead each other. They can provide this tribe of peers. And I have just seen so many changes in this group. So David told me his story where he had a lot of anger about his mom's debilitating illness. And he wasn't really experiencing it, and it was coming out as anger at his mom, but he wasn't conscious of that. But by getting the anger out in a safe place with men, the only place where he felt like he could truly be angry, he was able to get over it and to actually treat his mom with a lot more empathy. Or my husband has gone to the group and talked about ego stuff at work, or how hard the transition to becoming a parent has been. And I feel like the men in this group have grown so much over the 12 months that it's been happening that I just paid for my brother-in-law to be in a men's group. And I want there to be tons of men's groups, because I really feel like this isn't an issue that a therapist or a mom or I can really solve. I think men need to be solving this problem within themselves.
The way you said it's really powerful, because if you walk down the hallway at Stern, there's Golden Seeds, Women in Venture Capital, Black Women's Consulting Club. There are women's support groups. There's nothing for men. And these groups are really wonderful. Man Talks is one that I've been looking at, where they said, let's get together and just now. Be supportive.
I could pop one up on Instagram right this moment.
What?
A place where men could go and sit and talk between men. I don't think it's just women based. What year was this made in?
Like 2 months ago.
This is also UK based, I think, so I don't know what the differences between the UK and the US are in those like resources and stuff.
And it's a fairly new phenomenon.
Yeah. I think people are afraid of men gathering because traditionally bad things have happened in that.
Gangs.
Right. Gangs. I'm just thinking of like many situations in which like if once there's a tiki torch, I want there to be some women there, right? Like, so there's a reason why people have been fearful of this. Or it's like when the whole world was a men's group, a men's club, you didn't need to have men's clubs. But I think in this moment, this is a really powerful, organic, grassroots way for men to change. So I imagine that you have group chats with men that are your peers that you go to for advice. And I feel like there's men out there that don't have that. And we are meant to make decisions by getting advice from other people. I personally have a board of directors that in my life, when I'm going to make a big decision, I meet with them. So when I took my last job, when I decided to move, all of these different things, I meet with my board of directors and I say, what am I not seeing? What are my blind spots? And they've given me a lot of good and hard advice. And I think we all need to be building our own board of directors. And for men, that might be this men's group.
Do you mind if I pause this conversation for a moment? I want to talk about our show sponsor today. You know, with all your you can buy partners roast each other.
Yeah.
Like my trial period at shopify.com/partner. It is hard as a young man to share how you feel with other young men, even if they're like your best friends. It's so much easier just to roast each other.
Yeah.
Like my group chat with my guys.
Yeah.
Is probably a little bit more advanced in terms of emotional openness, but most of it's just like a war zone. We're criticizing each other, attacking each other, but that's kind of our way of showing love. And then you'll have once every 2 weeks, someone will be going through something. So like one of my friends now, they've just found out that there's a complication with pregnancy, and the tone shifts, and we all become supportive. But my girlfriend tells me how rare that is, that we have this space where we'll talk about.
I think the show that I was talking to you about that you should watch, he did spill a little bit of that where like men don't talk about like vulnerable things within their friend groups. It's always just like banter. Do you feel like that within your group chats, that like it's always just for banter and not just like for serious things?
Canter, yeah.
Yeah. And when y'all do bring up something that's like vulnerable, like what's the reaction? Isn't that what you wanted, essentially?
I don't think we really made anything vulnerable. Like it's strictly about
banter.
Canter, yes.
And how would y'all change that? Do you think that's something that y'all should change or not?
I would love for her to change, but my friends are not me. You know.
Have you tried to? Being a person that wants it?
You know, not really necessarily trying. I don't try to do anything anymore. When you get shut down too much times, it comes down to the point where I thought you just don't try nothing.
Would you like to find a friend group where you could express yourself vulnerably?
I think I've got to the stage of where I don't really care to express myself anymore. Yeah, I've had a friend that was like that, like where I could go to him like, this is what it is. This is what he tell me what I should do, what I should not do, give me his perspective, and you know, I'm still not with my friend, but yeah, I don't think I really could express myself anymore.
But now, how do you think that's gonna affect you moving forward? Being from all the shit that they talked about.
Just keep to myself.
How do you change the cycle? Because one day you do want to have kids.
Who? Oh, nigga. Not me.
No? And if you change your mind?
Mine wouldn't change. I don't think I'm all the way there to have kids.
That's fair.
And if my mind would change, it probably, I don't know, who knows? I was lucky, but I don't think it would change. I think I'm just so. I think I don't want to be like my pops, which I'm not gonna be like him, but I also don't want to be like my aunt, to where like she has kids, but it's like living her life like she's a teen, you know. And I feel like my life, I haven't really lived it to the full capacity yet. So if I have a kid, it's another responsibility, and I don't mind the responsibilities, but I want to live my life to the full potential, because there's only one life to live. You know.
Now, don't you think that's a decision that every man should be making? Like the ones that, you know, decided to get entangled with a woman, and then she should have been the one to choose him. Shouldn't you think that they should have the same thoughts of you? If they think they can't be there for that child?
Yeah, but niggas like, niggas like good time. That's how I was telling Shrimmy the other day. Like, that's my father. My father loves a good time. He doesn't like to use condoms. And when the good time hits the fan and there's responsibilities, you don't want to take care of responsibilities.
Now, essentially, these are moments of vulnerability. So it goes back again to, do you really think that that's a woman's fault?
I thought you were saying I'm being vulnerable. Yeah. It's like a 50-50 thing.
Because it could be like, okay, there are some situations where I will say like women be like they're intentionally trying to trap the man.
Correct. Trying
to exclude them girls. Talking about like a woman, like in the sense that, oh yeah, I thought this man would be the love of my life. Yeah, I'm gonna have unprotected sex with him, whatever the hell. And then things just flip like that. You think that's my fault still? Just because I had a moment of vulnerability slip between my fingers?
Were there any red flags that you didn't peep?
You may have missed
a lot of things, yeah.
You may have missed them.
You have to pay attention to a lot of things. I
may not have the discernment. I may have had a couple dumb moments, but do you think that's still my fault? I'm in shambles right now. I don't even want to have a kid, but I don't want to have an abortion either. You still think that's my fault? Sounds about right. It's hard being a girl sometimes.
Never say it wasn't.
Our emotions and how we're feeling, and we'll switch from like trying to kill each other in the most like funny way to being really, really emotionally supportive. A lot of men don't have that.
Well, it's so funny that you said that, because my husband's really funny, and so are some of the other guys in the group. And they actually had to talk about how they needed to be less funny because the humor was becoming a distraction. And somebody brought up, you know, in their own male way, like, I think that sometimes we're about to go deep and then someone makes a joke, and even though that joke was really good, we don't go back to where we were and we don't go as deep. So they actually work on being less funny in that group. But look at the work that you do. You sit for hours a week and you learn and you ask people questions and you're working on yourself. I'm not surprised that you have a group of peers that you can go to for that. But I would wager that the average man doesn't have that. Yeah. And I feel like there are going to be so many women who are listening and watching this and they're like, I want that for my husband.
What is the evolutionary basis for this? This is what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, did we lose the man's group at some point in our past? And is that why we're adding it back into our lives? Like, what used to do this job before?
So what I've heard, and I think evolutionary biology, you always have to take certain things with a grain of salt because people can kind of explain away anything with it. But it's that a lot of times men were sitting next to each other and they were having these conversations on the savannah. And that's often why like guys prefer to do activities side by side and not facing each other. And so you had men who were in conversation with their peers or, you know.
Outside.
And outside.
Yeah. Hey, heard you got divorced.
Right, yeah. Right. Or it's like, you know, why it's so good to have conversations in the car. I feel like you had a lot of men that were in groups at church. You had men who were in the Elks Club. You had veterans that were meeting. We actually feel like this is a time where much fewer men are getting together. And this is all of the amazing research that's happening now around loneliness, is that the average young guy is spending many fewer hours a week with their peers face to face. So even though a guy might be catching up with his friend playing video games.
I blame technology, literally what she just said, like video game shit, like technology isn't enough for like social interaction. So of course the statistics are gonna start going less and less and less and less and less as years start to go by, because everybody's just gonna rely on this technology communication style. Like when we were younger, we were playing double dutch outside. Kids nowadays, like, I have a younger sibling. This girl is on FaceTime all day playing Roblox. Of course, things are gonna be changing. They're different now. It's just what it is. So
I just don't think that that's the same thing. And so I feel like we need this in-person time with our friends to develop these relationships. And instead we have people on TikTok, people on Twitch, watching other people live their lives.
You brought two interesting things. One is your friend group. I have a similar group. Same eight guys I lived with my freshman year at UCLA. For 30 or 40 years, we've been kind of constant contact, email now on WhatsApp. When your friend had something bad happen to him, I think for a long time men have weighed in and showed empathy for each other. What none of my male friends have ever done, their friend group would say, is I've never heard one of my male friends go, I'm depressed. I'm just super fucking lonely and depressed. You just don't hear that from men. I'm struggling with anger. I'm all of a sudden I have erectile dysfunction. I've never heard one of my male friends, when their mom dies or they get divorced, we weigh in with a lot of empathy, but you never hear them really open up because men are worried that if we display weakness, another man might kill us and take our shit from us, or the women aren't going to want to have sex with us. So there's still, I think, a huge inability for men to proactively talk about how they're really feeling. And then you talked about a board of directors. A great board of directors for a man in his 20s, not unfortunately, is a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I'll just use personal experience. I had a great girlfriend when I was 24, and she basically said to me, if you don't stop getting high every night, I'm going to stop having sex with you. That was very motivating for me. I really like being with a partner. Without the guardrails of a romantic relationship, I think men are just, I don't want to say lost, but women create more social connections outside of a romantic relationship. And sometimes that absence of a romantic relationship, they pour that energy into friendships and their professional life. Those men start pouring it into video games and Reddit and porn. So the fact that only 1 in 3 men in America under the age of 30 has a girlfriend and 2 in 3 women has a boyfriend.
I don't get this. Because see, this is where, again, I go back to the point. You say that it's a woman's fault at some point, but then at some point, the woman is kind of like your only board of directors. So this woman who was essentially your board of directors is also at fault that you just fucking up the game. How does that make sense? The woman who was essential to your saving is also essential to you just being a fuck up. Let's just say that you are, theoretically. And it may not even be her fault. So we go back to, is it really the woman's fault or is it the man's? And it's not like I want to put all the blame on the man, because I really do have like a lot of, what would be the word? It's not understanding, but empathy. I have empathy for men because I get it. But it's like I also don't get the man who you're fucking up your shit. Just like we could pick up and be a piece of our growth, so can you as a man. Like, what makes you any different from a woman? You could be just as strong, as we're apparently seeing.
Well, that's mathematically impossible. It's not because women are dating older because they want more economically and emotionally viable men. If I hadn't been in relationships that were great guardrails for me in terms of my own behavior, my own ambition, men need, without the prospect or the existence of a romantic relationship, men have worse outcomes than women who don't have. Is what I'm? Do you agree with what I'm saying? Does the research bear that out?
You know, it's interesting because part of me where my head goes is like, are you asking women to do the emotional labor of raising men? And when you phrase it like that, it sounds really negative. Yeah. But from anecdotal experience, from my own life, you know, I've been with my husband for 10 years. I think we both really shaped each other. But like, even yesterday, he texted me and he's like, I'm going to get an Uber instead of renting a car at the airport. You've taught me how to be such a savvy traveler. Like, that's a small example, but it's like, you really do influence each other. And I think sometimes about my single friends and how they go to bed at night and they don't have a person next to them to give them advice and to listen to them talk about their day. And I think that when we're in long-term relationships, there's an element of raising each other and building memories together and making each other better and having that investment.
+1 = 3.
Right. And that's why all these women that come to me and all these men that are looking for love, that want relationships, and something is happening right now where the gap just seems to be widening and these relationships aren't happening. And this is even true in teenage relationships. So it used to be that for baby boomers and Gen X, 3/4 of men had a relationship in their teen years. And now it's under 50%. And so if you start building your relational skills at an early age, then you get better and better at dating over time. But if, as you said, by the time you're 30, you haven't been in a relationship, that's seen as a red flag to a lot of people. And so I think we have a problem now, but I'm really projecting that we're going to have a much greater problem in the future.
I think the real enemy of relationships and mating for people in their 20s that we haven't talked a lot about. I had Dr. Anna Lemke from Stanford on my pod talking about addiction, and something we're just starting to come to grips with, and as I read more about it, I think porn is really...
Let's talk about porn.
Well, personal experience.
Interesting comment.
I used to go on campus. The only reason I graduated from UCLA, I graduated with a 2.27 GPA. If I graduated with a 1.97, I wouldn't have graduated. Not the only motivator, but a real motivator for me was the prospect of meeting someone. I could go onto campus, and there might be a chance I'd meet friends, be social, and possibly meet a potential romantic partner. It was very motivating. And if I'd had porn on this and on my screen, always available, I'm not sure I would have gone on campus. And I just would have spent a lot more time at home. And unfortunately, the deepest pocketed, most talented companies in the world are trying to convince young people that they can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen with an algorithm. And what I say to young men I coach is that I'm not going to tell you not to consume porn, but try to modulate it, because I think that fire of wanting to meet someone, wanting to demonstrate excellence, and being
having perseverance and enduring rejection and getting your shit together and dressing well and smelling nice and showering for God's sakes, that mojo, that desire is incredibly important for society. And we're taking young men's mojo away with frictionless, open access, on-demand porn.
Okay. With this now, I definitely agree with what you're saying. Just because when I'm on semen retention,
yeah, I don't really understand this concept. So
I feel like I'm more me, and I feel like I could go out, I could talk to people, I could go out and socialize, I could go out and just really be me. Versus like now when I'm like watching the hub and shit, and I crank on out, yeah, I'm done. I feel depleted. I don't want to talk. And then with the concept of him saying like, you can technically, if I really wanted to, I could build like not necessarily build, but like if I want to see curly haired Puerto Rican, I could see curly haired Puerto Rican. She might not be to the T of what but my imagination is strong enough to where I could. This is that curly haired Puerto Rican I'm looking for.
Okay.
Versus like, okay, in real life I might want a curly haired Puerto Rican, but it might not go my way. And then I feel like the more you indulge in the hub, the more you indulge in it, the less you have confidence outside if you run across a curly haired Puerto Rican.
But why? Why does that bring your confidence down? I thought
What can you say to her? All you're thinking about is straight.
Oh, like just like.
Yeah.
I thought it would. Essentially, I would think it would bring your confidence a little bit more up.
Nah, because like you're only really thinking about sex when you.
So does it essentially like create this illusion in your mind, like, oh, I can't have that. Exactly.
And I was actually like once there upon a time where like I feel like it could be like the middest bitch, and I'm like, yeah, she's out of my league.
But why?
Just because it's like
like I don't get that part. I mean, maybe it's the illusion of it for real, but
that's why I'm trying. I would get the niggas to be in serum retention. Porn does something to your mind that I just can't explain to you. Like it's a whole different vibe.
Like, I don't know. From a girl's perspective, we definitely don't think like that. Like, that's the last thing on my mind. I would never think like, oh, that's a nigga I can't have. Those niggas are actually everywhere. Just like...
Yeah, they are everywhere.
The bitches are everywhere. And you could have one of them.
You gotta understand, if you could go online, and there is, like, websites where you could, like, literally, like, you can create a virtual reality girl.
Yeah,
to your liking.
I'm fucking sure of it. Yeah. That's scary.
And then there's just
it should not be like that.
I mean, that's
fucking terrifying.
It's life, and then that's what keeps you in the house. And then
now the fact that the goggles are coming out,
even
this
better.
whole AI stuff, like it's right there. Shit. That's crazy. But it's like, no, you could literally have the real life thing.
No, yes, but no. Just because girls are so... It all stems back to
overly going, I promise you.
It all stems back to females already have their specific type in their head. So I might say I want the curly haired Puerto Rican, but the curly haired Puerto Rican want the Dominican 6'3" baseball player.
So we're fucked. That's what you're saying. We're fucked.
Yeah, and that's like
we're just never gonna find love.
Another reason why I don't really be shooting my shot that often, just cause it's like
we're
fucked. Like don't get me wrong, shooting my shot is pretty easy, but it's just like with the situation with the gym thing. Like if I'm gonna experience that every single time I interact with a female, I just wouldn't do it at all. And I think I don't know if they're gonna touch upon that, but I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And I could just go home and think about the bitch and then crank on out. Boom.
Oh my god.
Skinny black girl, crank on up. I don't need to talk to her. At least I got her my imagination, and I did what I did. And that orgasm is probably top tier. That part.
Have you seen these no-fap communities?
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay, so I was listening to this episode of Modern William with Chris Williamson, and he was interviewing Hamza, who was self-identifying as a former red pill person. And he was talking about how much it changed his life to try to enter the no-fap community.
Which means?
No masturbation. And so I do think that porn is a huge problem. My first job out of college was running the porn pod for Google. So what this meant was that we would sell ads for the porn advertisers. This team does not exist anymore. This was a long time ago. My parents were like, I sent you to Harvard, and now you're selling ads for pornography. But when I look back, I'm like, what was I perpetuating? Because I feel like there's just so many problems with what technology is doing in terms of replacing human connection. So let's just project out. ChatGPT is already amazing. I'm currently in my Google feed getting ads for Replica. And the ads say, get your perfect AI boyfriend, always there for you. So you think about the fact that real life relationships are messy. I tell my husband on a weekly basis, please throw your contact lens in the garbage. And every week we have a disagreement about that. Well, guess what? Your online girlfriend, she doesn't nag you. She doesn't tell you to pick up your socks. She only tells you how great you are and always tells you, that you're doing the right thing and how was your day. Then you insert sex robots. Okay, so you have your emotional needs met, you have your sexual needs met, maybe you're watching porn while engaging with your sex robots. Why would you want to go through the very challenging potential rejection of real life relationships? And I feel like if all these things come to pass, which it seems very likely that they will, we are truly in a crisis moment when it comes to birth rate and future generations.
That's like another thing I was just saying. Like, I wouldn't want to deal with that in real life when I could have a robot that is, you don't gotta hear her nag about nothing, nigga. Not you being unhinged, not you streaming about this, not you talking to that girl, like nothing. And then, the other robot that meets your sexual needs, you don't really need to speak to nobody in real life, to be honest. And that's like another thing that keeps niggas in the house. And then that builds like overly big niggas. Because all they do is just be in the house. They don't have no socialize. They probably got one friend. The one friend is also a geek. And such a weird word. And all they do is eat all day, play the video games all day, crank one out all day, and they got work, and repeat. Don't go to the gym, don't play no sports, don't have any real life connections or communicate with anybody, and that's what life goes, bro. That's life. That's life. And then even the other day when I went out for the St. Patrick's Day thing, one of the friends in the group was, so he was saying like, oh, he doesn't go up to girls because he's scared of rejection. Nigga, are you a bitch? Like, what do you mean you're scared of rejection? Like, I have to tell him like, bro, stop all that bullshit. I don't want any of that bullshit around me. Like, at the end of the day, when LeBron plays his game, he might say, yeah, I want to score 30 points today, and I want to go 10 for 10, or however much did they say the 30. But he might go 6 for 10. You don't make every shot you take. You know what I'm saying? As long as he's putting it up and he's shooting and he's getting consistent with it, that's all that matters. So you saying that you're scared of rejection, you're never gonna win in life. You're never gonna find a girlfriend. You're never gonna find a wife. You're just gonna be in your fucking basement like you do, play the video games and beat your dick all day. On the other hand, I don't do that.
And it impacts them. It'll impact the economy because the skills you have to develop to be successful in the mating market are life skills. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to endure rejection. You have to have a sense of humor. You have to be able to read the room. Show me a guy who's good in a bar, I'll show you a guy who'll probably be good in a boardroom. And the skills you have to develop as a young man if you want a romantic and a sexual relationship pay dividends the rest of your life. And if you don't develop those skills, I think it impacts your life across a bunch of dimensions.
This is something I'm worried about for Gen Z in general. So I did a ton of research with post-pandemic Gen Z daters, men and women in the UK and the United States. And such a big theme that came out of it was that they don't have rejection resilience. And I think that we hear this in many aspects of life. So someone that I'm close to, he's the former dean of Brown, he's a professor there. And he was talking about how it used to be that his office hours were empty and that's when he could do his reading or play solitaire. But now students come basically saying, tell me exactly what's going to be on the test. Tell me exactly what to write in my paper because they are not willing to fail. I have friends who are managers at Google and they give somebody feedback in a Google Doc and the person is crying because they take that as extreme rejection. And so if you don't have the resilience built up 100%. To fail, then you are not going to take risks. And everything in life worth having is worth taking a risk for. And
exactly. And that's why, like, with me, for anything, I just wing it. Whether I know what to do or what not to do, I'm still gonna wing it. So that's me going outside and seeing the girl, and I want to talk to the girl. I might get butterflies a little bit because you never know what she's gonna say. But I'm still gonna go up to talk to her. Whether it's I want to start a business tomorrow and I don't know about doing this, I'm gonna do my research and I'm gonna start. And if I fail, and I feel at least I'm still learning on what not to do and what to do in the future and whatnot. And it's really all about taking life is all about taking risks. You know, you like.
Yeah.
You're cutting up and you want to take that cut, but the cut look too small. Take that motherfucking risk and hit that motherfucking cut. But some people are just scared of that, and it's because like they don't like to fail, and it's just like that's life though. You can't always expect things to be perfect. That's not fucking life. Nobody's perfect. Nothing's perfect. So, you know, I don't know. As long as you try and you put yourself out there, that's really all that matters. But you know,
So I feel that I have my dream job. Nobody messaged me on LinkedIn and said, hey, Logan, do you want to study dating and relationships? No, I invented this job and now I get to have it. And same thing is true with relationships. It's not about waiting for the perfect person to show up. It's about becoming a great person who somebody else chooses and going after what you want.
I want to talk about all of this and specifically offer some solutions for the parents, to the boys, to the teens, to the men that are listening. We had a young man actually write in on this subject. And he said, I've suffered with crippling loneliness, and so I've spent over $1,000 hiring women online just to talk to me and to keep me company. On top of that, I've spent several $1,000s more engaging in other business with them. After doing this for nearly a year now, I still feel incredibly unfulfilled. And on the subject of porn, 30% of internet traffic is now related to porn, with about 80% of...
Wow. I mean, like, I was gonna kind of touch on that when you were talking about the whole, like, I would rather just have somebody who doesn't like bitch or like tell me what to do, blah 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 blah. But I guess like okay, that's cute and all, but like what about the part about human connection? Like I don't know, maybe I'm into just like too many like Criminal Minds type of things and horror movies where I've seen like the potentials of what technology could really fucking do. I don't think that's really what you would want. Like, oh my god, like.
I mean, of course you'd want the human connection, but if I have to deal with that all day, every day, yeah, okay, we say seven days a week. If I got to deal with it 5 days out of 7 days, it's like I'd rather just not, and I'd rather just if I have to sacrifice the human connection, I'll sacrifice the human connection.
Maybe you just don't think that maybe that's just not your person. They just have a personality type that doesn't fit with yours.
Yeah, there is that. And then, but you gotta understand, sometimes it's hard to drop people, bro. It's not that easy. Especially like when you done...
It is.
Strung them that long. When you done bring them down that path for the longest, it's just not that easy.
It fucking is.
Like, it might be for you, cause...
Let me tell y'all, it is easy to drop people. If they don't do things that you don't like or they don't align with your lifestyle, they need to leave.
I agree 100%, but at the same time, it's like I could deal with it. I'll deal with it.
No, you can't.
I could deal with it until
there's a certain line of what you should accept dealing with.
And I'm gonna deal with it until I really can.
No, you should know when enough is enough.
Enough be enough the first fucking day.
Okay, then that's when you should be like, okay, you gotta go, bitch.
I'm gonna deal with
Pack your shit today.
I'm gonna deal with it, man.
No.
I'm gonna deal with it until like I really feel like enough is enough.
It depends on what we're talking about. It depends on what we're talking about. If it's some shit that you could actually deal with, that's so be it. That's what you know marriages be for. A little bit of turbulence. But if it's some shit that, you know... If it's some shit that, you know, shouldn't be flying with you, then you should not be tolerating that shit.
I mean, one thing, like, I could tolerate anything, but my biggest thing is
Don't
just
say
like...
that.
I could.
No, you cannot. Have higher standards for yourself.
No, but I'm telling you, I could tolerate anything. The only thing that I cannot tolerate is just the whole nagging thing. Like, I don't like that.
So then that's not a girl for you. It's not a girl for you.
And, you know, listen, when you see me smile and I hit you with the, just know I'm kind of my days. That's it. That's all I can tell you. I'm kind of my days. Like,
it should only be like about 7 days in that bitch.
I'm kind of my days. You know,
give yourself a week.
Whatever. Like, that's just the whatever face. Just whatever, you know. And I have those things a lot. Where I'm just like,
no one to leave.
Whatever. What?
No one to leave.
I don't leave because then.
Leave. Leave.
I have the soft spot in my heart.
Don't.
The little smaller red piece. My heart is blue, but the little smaller red piece is the part that cares, you know?
We all have that for everybody. Of course, they're going to have a little soft spot in your heart. They were somebody special at one point.
I just hate, like the Tyler Creator song that I played for you the other day, like, that whole, like, building the connection and then, like, it just dispersing. Like, I don't like that.
But, like, you have to realize that, like, sometimes you grow out of people. And that may be in a relationship, too. Y'all may just grow 5 years later together and you may realize, like, wow, we not in love how we was before.
Yeah.
The spark is now gone. I don't like you no more.
That's what I was telling you the other day. I could love somebody but not like them.
And that's okay.
You
may like them for a temporary period of time. And then you grow to love them and then it just may be love. I don't like you no more.
Yeah, and that's really what I've been on. I just love.
That's okay.
I don't like.
But you gotta know when to tell people goodbye. You gotta. Sometimes people be in your life for a short time period. Sometimes. Gotta say later, Bookie. It was nice while it lasted.
I wanna be by my lonely. I put in work by my lonely. I put in work by my lonely.
Porn traffic coming from men and 20% coming from women. I actually had a conversation on this podcast before about porn, and funnily enough, the top comment was, by the way, us women get porn addicted too, because it was a bit of a blind spot to me, but I think that's something that's worth acknowledging. And the stats are staggering in terms of how higher porn consumption correlates to higher probabilities of depression. What do you do about it? Like, on an individual level, I get it. Try not to watch porn, but I mean, that doesn't seem like incredibly great advice, because if you're lonely, you're not getting laid, no one wants to date you for all the reasons we talked about today. Restraint seems to be a pretty shitty solution.
I'll give this one to Scott.
Okay, so I coach young men. I take 2 to 3 on at any time, and I don't know if this is the right way, but it's my way. I'm like, you gotta lean into your advantage.
I'm not gonna lie. I've been wanting to do this for, like, younger people. I wouldn't mind taking on young men too, but I know, like, from the statistics, it wouldn't be ideal. It would be ideal for women to be, like, my mentees, but I've been wanting to do that stuff. I think it's good for the younger generation. They need that stuff.
You're our age, you have capital, you have more money than time. They have capital, they have a lot of time. And I ask them to unlock their screen, and I say to them, I gamble with options. I gamble. In my age, I still gamble. I preach about low-cost index funds, and I buy call options. That makes no fucking sense. It's gambling, but I know it. I watch porn. I try and modulate my use so I can put the majority of my sexual energy into my partner, but I watch porn because I want them to not feel like I'm going to judge them. They unlock their phone. And I said, we're going to find 8 to 12 hours a week of time, of capital, and we're going to reinvest that capital in higher ROI investments. It is so easy to find 8 to 12 hours. I can sometimes find 7 hours or 15 hours just in TikTok.
You look at screen time.
I look at screen time. And I say, all right, come through with me. Yeah. We're going to find 8 to 12 hours. And then we're going to reinvest that capital in 3 investments. 1, we're going to start working out and getting fit. You're going to work out 3 times a week with weights. You should be able, the human male form is spectacular. You should be able to walk into any room under the age of 30 if you're a man and know that if shit got real, you could kill and eat everybody or outrun them. I need you to be strong. You're going to be more mentally healthy. You're going to be kinder. Look at the people who break up fights at bars. They're big, strong men. Look at the people who defend their country. You want to be strong as a man. It feels fucking amazing. Testosterone, your bone structure, your muscle mass, it's amazing. Lean into that. We're going to get strong. 2, you got to start making some money. And the kids, to be honest, the kids I'm coaching are really struggling. These are kids at home at the age of 23 with their mom, not getting along with their mom, nothing going on. If you have a phone, you can make money. I don't care if it's Lyft, TaskRabbit, because you get a taste for the flesh. And the way to start making a lot of money is to start making a little bit of money. Because you start to figure out the economy. How can I make more money? Maybe at some point, could I buy a car and hire a driver to be an Uber? What is the way, could I get a certification in plumbing? You start figuring out, and you start getting your greed glands going, oh my God, it's awesome money. I can go out, I can go to a concert. It gets those greed glands going. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to put ourselves in the company of strangers in the agency of something bigger than ourselves twice a week. Church group, softball league, nonprofit, charity, whatever it is. And then 3A, and this is, I just started doing this, I've only done it 2 times,
and it's an exercise, and I say, and it goes to I think no is the way to success. Show me someone who's successful, I'm going to show you a shit ton of no's. I ran for sophomore, junior, senior class president, lost all 3 times, decided to run for senior class president, lost. I applied to 38 jobs, I got 1 offer, 9 schools, rejected by 7. I mean, my whole life has been about no. And that's why I'm successful, is I was always able to endure it. So I said, this is what I want you to do. I need you to go up to a stranger at wherever we're doing, church group, Writers Club, whatever it might be, education, continuing education. And you're going to ask them out for coffee. It's a friend. Hey, what are you doing? You want to watch the game? You want to watch the Liverpool game this weekend? Let's go to a bar. If it's a woman you might have an attracted to, hey, trying to get a rap on, would you like a coffee? And here's the goal. The goal is no. And we're going to celebrate no. Because you're going to call me and I'm going to say, did you ask someone out for coffee or to a bar? And most likely they'll have said no. They'll be polite, they'll come with an excuse. And then I'm going to ask you if you're okay. And you're going to say yes. And that's the victory.
It's interesting because if you go on TikTok or if you go on X, you'll find a lot of videos of women filming themselves as a guy inappropriately came and made a gesture to them. And
that's where I'm at right now, though, in life, where like the 3 or 4 things I kind of follow, where it's like getting into the gym. The gym been treating me lovely, you know, and there's even like I think it just builds like a more like overall you get discipline, you get dedicated to the gym, but it also builds like a confidence because now like I'm building myself in the mirror. I'm like I slap any bitch walking in the room today, you know what I'm saying? And it's just because like I'm looking more fit inside of my clothes. I'm feeling more just well-rounded, just healthier, I guess you can say. So that's why I definitely do advocate for the gym. Then he said money. I mean, money's money. Right now, my biggest thing is just feeling around the next move. Like he said, plumbing. I was talking to my mother has this one friend from Canada, and I was talking to him the other day because I picked him up from the airport, and he was saying like I should go to trade school and either look into plumbing or electrician. And then he said like a third thing, which is like both of them together. So I'm gonna text him like probably like tomorrow and ask him what it was. What I was considering going back to going to trade school, just to see what the vibes are like there. But then it's like I need to. It's about maintaining everything into the schedule. So if I go to trade school, I need to go to trade school and make money on the side, and then have time for the gym too as well. It's like everything has to fit in my schedule. And then he said like going to like social events, whether it's a church or the bar, just socializing with people. I've been trying to go there. I haven't been to church recently, but potentially I'll probably go tomorrow, potentially. And then just embrace the rejection. I've been doing that. I get rejected everything. I'm getting rejected right now by, you know.
And then like publicly shaming them on the internet. It's very popular to do in the gym. Yeah. They set up a phone, they're working out, a guy comes over and asks if they need help with the weights. It then goes viral online because that guy was being inappropriate. Like you shouldn't. So like as a guy, it's quite complicated to know how and where you can roll up without being filmed going viral.
I know. So we talked about the first dating paradox, which is this idea that women now need more from men and are raising the bar because they can be providers on their own, but men weren't taught how to do that, and there's sometimes shame for it. So I think the second big dating paradox is that men are expected to lead and to approach, but I truly feel like in a post-Me Too era, it's much more confusing. And so many people say to me, I don't want to meet on an app, that's not romantic, I want to meet in real life. But I'm not finding that people are meeting in real life because people are afraid to approach each other. I think one is being afraid of being called creepy, but the other one, which is what you're talking about, is that this culture of making TikToks or going online with this datertainment to talk about how this person approached you or how inappropriate that was. And so I feel like there's a lot of women waiting for men to approach them, but then shaming the men who do. I think one of the solutions there is we should allow people to shoot their shot in a non-creepy way.
Can I just say something to that? If the guy rolls up and he's 6'4", and he's, gorgeous, it's fine, it seems.
The difference between creepy and romantic is the perceived attractiveness of the person making the overture.
I think that is true. If you are super hot, it's less likely to be perceived as creepy. But you have all these people that are saying, I want to be approached, and they're not being approached. And so there was this rise of run clubs last summer, right? Everyone said the new dating app is a run club. I asked everywhere I go, have you met someone at a run club? No, people are not really meeting there. So since 2017, the number one way that people are meeting is online. Hinge is setting up a date every 2 seconds. This is where the dating is happening. If people want more things to happen offline, they actually have to approach each other. And I'm just not seeing that happen.
But my understanding is the majority of women still expect the man to take the initiative.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the most frightening stats I've seen. According to Pew, more than 50% of men between the ages of 18 and 24 have never asked a woman out in person. And
I just find that so just upsetting and rattling, because that means they're either not asking people out or they're asking them out online, where quite frankly they can't demonstrate any sense of excellence. And I think the beautiful thing about human sexuality is sometimes you don't even know why they're attracted to someone. You like the way they smell, you find out they're funny, and that happens in person. But we need more third spaces, more places people can meet. And also, I actually think it would be helpful to have in the senior year of high school a class called Adulting, where amongst other things you teach them about the interest rate on a credit card. Little thing. My kid can do integers and he doesn't understand the interest rate on his credit card. And also, quite frankly, I think young men need guidance around how to express romantic interest while making the other person feel safe. And also, that if you express romantic interest and ask someone out for coffee and they say no, you're both going to be fine. You haven't committed a crime against humanity.
Right.
As long as you're respectful and you don't make the person feel uncomfortable. But men aren't even asking women out.
Everything you're saying is what I'm seeing. So I was talking to this incredible 16-year-old girl who built this AI chatbot called Ask Elle, and she's taken all of the relationship science research that she's seen, and she's trained this chatbot, and she's trying to help teens get safe and empowered dating advice. And I asked her, what is the number one question that you're getting? And it's how to ask someone out. And so I think people are really struggling. It's not that teens in all of human history had the secret, it's that they were willing to do it and fail, and now we're just not seeing that. And so I think that we have glossed over the pandemic. It was this really traumatic time, really scary stuff happened, and we don't want to talk about it. But people that came of age during the pandemic, their social skills are worse. They missed out on critical moments of becoming a human, and we are seeing that in the workplace. All of these things about Gen Z, Gen Alpha, that came from something. It came from parenting, it came from digital addiction, it came from the pandemic and online learning. And I think that if you do not have the social skills to approach someone and ask them out, there just will be literally fewer couples.
I want to throw a Molotov cocktail into this and something that's controversial I got pushback on. I think one of the enemies of mating is that there's too little drinking. If you look at millennials, they spend $30 billion on alcohol. Gen Z, it's crashed to $2 billion. Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman declared war on drinking. I think young people need to drink more, go out and make a series of bad decisions that might pay off. I don't see drunkenness, I just see togetherness.
I'm going to drink to that, because, okay.
The majority of great friendships I have and the romantic opportunities I've had, not always, but often alcohol played a role. And I worry that with a lack of going out, being out of the house, and also a lack of drinking, that we've taken away a social lubricant that breaks down some of the walls and some of the initial awkward...
Weed is legal now, at least in New York.
Not necessarily.
An entry into a potential romantic relationship.
I think some of the increase in being sober so curious comes from interest in being healthy.
Boring.
So we hear from Gen Z, I don't want to have anxiety the next day. They are much less
and it's
likely.
Expensive.
Yeah, they are much less likely than millennials to feel like there's a drink minimum for dates. But in general, we're seeing less risk-taking behavior from Gen Z. They are getting their licenses far later, if at all. They are losing their virginity much later, if at all. And so I feel like there's this rise of, or there's this decrease in risk-taking behavior, which in some ways is great. Fewer kids dying in car crashes and people being responsible. But I just feel like people are missing out on the experience to make mistakes as a young person. Yeah. And I think when I think back to my college experience, if there had been cameras that have high quality video on them at all times, I would have lived a very different college experience. I am so grateful that Instagram was not there when I was in college. And so if you live in a surveillance culture where at any moment somebody is snapping the room and they could see what you're doing, you're going to take your risks. And I just feel like there's this entire culture of people being very safe. And part of dating, part of mating is making mistakes, taking risks, and failing.
So what do we do about it, Logan? Scott gave a really good sort of advice for young men.
It just builds character,
And or the young person who's trying to increase their mating value, their dating value. What advice would you give to a young man about how to be attractive? Because there's going to be a lot of young men listening right now. I imagine from the stats.
First of all, I love what Scott said in terms of his advice, and I feel like it's one of those things where the secret to happiness or the secret to success is simple but hard. So it's not like there's infinite things you need to do. It's actually quite a simple plan, but it's quite hard to execute on it. A few things that I would add. So one is I have this friend, Sam Parr. He started The Hustle. He started the podcast My First Million. One thing that he did to make himself more attractive as a mate was he would develop these passions and really talk about them on dates, because he found that women were really drawn to the fact that he was pursuing other activities. So he got really into denim, and he would talk about these denim meets that he would go to, and he found that women were really drawn to that. He's very into the growth mindset and working on himself. He felt like that was something that women were so drawn to, how he was growing. Because if you think about the projections, well, when he met my friend Sarah, he wasn't making any money. She was making a lot more than him. But she could see that he had a great path ahead of him because he was constantly working and improving himself. The other thing I would tell men is, through my research, I found that men think, I need to be perfect. I need to be 6 feet tall. Look, women are not expecting you to fly them to the moon. They want effort. Remember the name of their best friend. Text them when they had a hard meeting and say, how did it go? Plan a thoughtful date. And so I think that you have men over here saying, if I'm not 6 feet tall, I don't have a chance, so why participate anyway? And then you have women saying, in some ways, I just want you to be an effortful, nice person, and I'm not even getting that.
Mess.
And so I think that for men, they can actually get much farther than they think and be better than 90% of men by doing some of these bare minimum things that other men aren't doing. So I have this question that I ask in my book, which is when you're deciding if you should break up with someone. If your partner were a piece of clothing in your closet, what would they be?
Is it my clothes?
Yeah,
or her
yeah, yeah.
clothes?
Your
My
clothes.
Oh, okay.
And it really has to be gut reaction. So, Scott, if you thought of one, I want to hear it.
I thought of like a black silk shirt, and that's probably because that's where we spend quality time together. Is when I'm wearing a black silk shirt. Special occasions, date night, restaurant, make an effort.
That's cute.
Do you feel good in it?
Yeah, of course, I feel my best in it. Yeah.
And do you have one for your wife?
Brunello Cucinelli cashmere V-neck sweater makes me look fantastic, makes me better, and is beautiful.
Yes, and mine for my husband would be this awesome orange robe that I have that represents being at home. I love the orange color that's really bright, and it represents our family time. So I've asked this question to...
I feel shame. I feel like mine was so superficial.
No, yours was great.
Cashmere V-neck Brunello.
No. I think your answer...
Family orange. I feel so shamed.
No. I think your answer is wonderful, and I actually, in general, find that outerwear answers are very strong because it means that you feel warm around them. It's you at your best.
I
This
just
is your
feel
favorite.
fucking fabulous. I don't know if
Yeah,
people want
that's all that matters. Your answer was great. The answers that worry me are something like a wool sweater that feels good, but then it's itchy, so I take it off. The ratty shirt that I wear to the gym. These are real answers I've gotten. Point is, for years I've been asking people this question. Well, now I want to ask people the question of, if you were a piece of clothing in your closet, what would you be? And I feel like we spend so much time saying...
What would you be?
What would I be? A piece of clothing. A piece of clothing. I mean, you know, I'm not as rich as they are. So I'm going to be realistic. And a piece of clothing I am. A piece of clothing that I am, that I wear. I would say like a hoodie or something.
That's not the same thing.
Like I'm like warm when you need me to be.
Yeah.
You know, reliable.
I'm closed off to myself.
Well, I don't know about that part. I'm very much like, and that part I'm like a piece of summer clothing.
Yeah, it'd be like a sweatshirt or something.
No, I'm like a sweatshirt in the time of like, you know, I'm warm. I'm there when you need me to be. I'm reliable. I'm a piece of clothing that's, you know, it's comfy. It's like a what do you call that? A safe space, a safe blanket, whatever the fuck. But I'm not like closed off. I'm closed off to an extent. Like I think I'm very much outgoing, and anybody that meets me pretty much says the same thing. So I'm not closed off.
I'm looking for this in a partner. This is the checklist. Well, look in the mirror. Do you have those traits? And so for somebody who says, I'm a ratty sweatshirt and it's not the thing that I would choose to wear, well, then work on yourself. And so I feel like there's a lot of feelings of, I'm going to relation shop. I'm going to look for a partner the way I look for Bluetooth headphones. Well, a lot of that is about breaking people down into these parts. And I feel like we should spend less time thinking about the checklist for a partner and more time thinking about who am I, and am I somebody who would be chosen?
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a lot about how young men are struggling. Which demographic of women do you find struggle the most as it relates to mating and dating?
So I work with a lot of very successful women, and that's also because I'm expensive to work with, and that's who my clients are. But I have a newsletter where I hear from 85,000 people. And so what I'm hearing is that a lot of women are saying men are intimidated by the amount of money that I make. They say that they're not going to be, but the more successful I become, the more threatened they are. I'm just talking to tons of women, personal friends. I feel like at my house, on one side of me and then two sides over, are women who are having babies, they call it like single mother by choice, where they literally were just like, I can't find a man and I want to become a mom, so I'm going to do it by myself. Yeah. And so I feel like there are just all these great women who are saying, Logan, I'm following your advice, I'm putting myself out there, I do all these things, but they're just not finding partners.
Do you find that the more successful a woman becomes, the more difficult it becomes for her to find a man that will not feel emasculated by her success?
I don't think that there's an exact correlation because it really depends who the guy is. There are guys out there who are like, let's be a power couple. but I feel like there are women who just feel like there's not enough good guys for them. And I'm curious what you think about this, but I live in the Bay Area. I'm seeing so much polyamory. And I think polyamory is interesting. I'm pro-polyamory. I like the fact that people are thinking about relationship structures in a new way. 50% of marriages end in divorce. Obviously, our one-size-fits-all approach to marriage isn't working. But I'm also wondering, well, let me tell you the story. I went to this dating event, and the dating event had 5 single women who were great, and their friends were hyping them up. And then there was 2 guys, and they were both polyamorous. And so I wonder, if you're a guy who feels like there's not that many good guys, why should I have to choose? I feel like that's a trend that I'm worried about.
Portia polygamy. If it's never been better to be a very attractive male, but you have so much opportunity, it does not incent good behavior or long-term relationships.
And I work with these guys, and you might think that they're the happiest people in the world. They are having sex. They are getting a lot of attention, but they're suffering from decision paralysis. And these are some of the guys that hit 40, 42, and they haven't gotten married. They don't have kids. And they sort of are like, why would I ever settle down if I don't have to, or I'm going to wait as long as possible? But they don't understand the opportunity cost, which is building a life with someone, having kids. Every year that you wait to have kids is a year that your kids will be alive without you. And so I really feel like these people in the top percentage, yes, they're having a much easier time, but they also have problems because they're having decision paralysis and they're not settling down.
But I would just say, I think the reality, though, on the ground is that if you're a high status male, you think age is on your side.
And it is.
And because the reality is the math is just unfair to women.
It is. Because
if you're a 30-year-old male making really good money, and relative, like just not unattractive, at 40, you're going to be even sexier. Your sexual currency goes up.
I do think that there's a point where it starts to go down, and I've seen that with my coaching clients, and part of that is just how the dating apps work, that if you are an attractive woman and you set your age maximum at 40, I do see that those men see diminishing returns after that age.
Well, especially if they haven't ever been in a long-term relationship.
Right, then that is seen as a clear red flag.
If you're looking to take the next step in your tech career, you're the right environment. You can expect all a help something quite alongside culture, and it seems like everyone is drinking matcha. And there's a good chance that matcha you're Ted. Only can you using it is one of those people, Ted Matcha, and on Amazon in the USA, will get the full rate Steven 40. What role does feminism and the rise of feminism play in all of this? Because I've had people on my podcast. I think actually our last episode we published was a lady who's a child psychologist. She's been that way for 3 decades. And she came on and said that the feminist movement has let men and women down in some ways. There's been great upsides, but there's also been a cost. And one of the things she was really big on, which I thought would be extremely controversial, it turns out it wasn't in the comment section, is that she believes women should be there for the first 2 years of a child's life. And I was like, I questioned her and I was like, and I looked at the stats and I looked at the research, and she basically makes the case that because the mother is producing certain hormones, so I searched it was true, we fact-checked that episode, and then beyond there, the man, her father, brings out another set of hormones in the young child, which are about play and adventure and all these kinds of things. So she makes the case that we've kind of lied to women, and we've told them that they can have it all. They can have an incredible career, they can also be incredible mothers, and she says that in her office she often sees mothers coming in saying that they're 39 years old, they're struggling, they're trying to do IVF, they feel like they were lied to, throwing all of that out there.
I'm going to quote Scott to Scott, which is, you can have it all, just not at the same time.
Yeah, I don't, it's, we can talk about what is the best hormone balance and brings out the best in kids, and then there's the real world. And my partner was working at Goldman Sachs with 2 babies and getting up at 5 a.m, and it was hell for her. And at the same time, I was struggling with trying to get economic traction because my whole identity as a man, I'm not proud of this, has been defined by money.
So is mine. I don't think men say this enough. Like, yeah, I thought this was really weird because we're in Austin right now, and my team put me up in a hotel, and it's just like a normal hotel. I'm like, so I don't give a fuck. My girlfriend comes to town tonight. Immediately my brain goes, oh my god, we need to move into a better hotel Airbnb because my girlfriend, I've been with her for 7 years, she doesn't give a fuck. She doesn't care about material things. She doesn't have a Louis Vuitton anything. She's a breathwork, she's a yogi, right? But there's still this part of me, even at this stage, where I'm like convinced she's not going anywhere, where I constantly think about, I need to be successful, I need to have money, I need to demonstrate strength, or she won't like me. It's so weird because it's not true. Like, objectively, I know it's not true, but it's in me.
I don't know. I think it's mostly true. What do you mean? I think in a capitalist society, the healthcare of your children, the opportunities your children have, your ability to provide, your ability to take care of your parents, unfortunately in our society, is so tightly correlated to money that I think at the end of the day, masculinity kind of comes down to provider, protector, and procreator. And I think every young man should at least start with the notion they're going to be the economic provider. And by the way, that might mean getting out of the way and being more supportive of your partner who happens to be better at the whole money thing. That's part of masculinity too. But a good place to start is to assume in a capitalist society that you have a responsibility to be economically viable. And every piece of incentive
in our society. I remember in the 70s when I was in grade school, our principal was a cool guy. He wore cool jackets and he had great hair and he smelled aqua velva and he drove a 240Z. You could be a high character, handsome, interesting, cool guy into karate or whatever. Now I just think it's all about the Benjamins. It's just so much. Our society, democracy, your rights, your sexual attractiveness as a man. I don't care what. Yeah, write me an article about how men just need to be emotionally available. Bullshit. It's so disappointingly about money in my view. All the incentives telling young men, and so they go to these quick schemes. If they can make money, they feel like losers. But what you're feeling, quite frankly, is common sense from every signal that if for some reason it doesn't work out with your mate, your selection set of mates, how interesting you are to other men, your opportunities, your rights, your democracy is going to be based on your ability to be economically powerful. It's not the way the world should be, but it is the way the world is. And what I say to young men is, there's just no getting around it. You have to be economically viable.
Would you say the same thing to women, or would you say there's no getting around it, you have to be hot?
No, I think women, unfortunately, so this is base analysis. Men get turned on with their eyes. It's more important for a woman to be aesthetically attractive than a man. Women get turned on with their ears. Is the way I would describe it. I think women, economic liberation and independence is paramount. You know, the thing that was the hardest thing in my life growing up, you know, whatever trauma I had, wasn't not having a dad in my life. It was that me and my mom didn't have any fucking money. And it was humiliating for us. It was very hard on her. It was emotionally very trying on her because she felt like she was failing as a mother. So I think women making a lot of money is a collective victory of our society. It is hugely important and wonderful. We should do nothing to get in the way of that. That doesn't in any way, though, obviate the fact that a man's opportunity, sexual currency, and place in our society is almost going to have an R of 1, regardless of how many subscriptions to the Atlantic or the New York Times you have, of his economic viability. And I think it's gotten worse. I don't think it's you used to be able to, if you were a high character, kind of cool, interesting, nice guy who was a principal at a junior high school, you had sexual currency. Now I think you can be a fucking dipshit, but if you sold $10 million in Dogecoin, you can get laid. And it's just getting worse because our capitalist economy is providing so many advantages solely based on money. And it sends the wrong signal, but I just tell dudes, you have to.
I think that may be right for some girls. I don't know. The whole idea of take me out to eat, fly me out here, and buy me this, buy me that, Lululemon on my butt. It's cute and all, but I don't know, man. I think if you're asking for that, you should be able to provide for that on your own, first and foremost. I think it should just be a kind gesture of a man to give me Lululemon on my butt. But I should be able to buy Lululemon for me if I'm asking for it. I don't know. I think we're kind of losing that fact, too. I don't know. I feel like girls be asking for that, but then don't be able to provide for anything either. And it's I don't know. I don't like that for us. City girls down a couple hundred for that.
Being economically viable. And some of that is just having discipline around saving money and showing that you have your act together. Maybe you don't make a lot of money, but I'm responsible. I'll be a good mate. I'll be a good partner. Maybe you're making more money than me, but I'll bring discipline. And, I know how to fix shit. I can be a good mate. But one of the things I'm really worried about in America is just everything has become about the Benjamins. Character is being squeezed out by money. God, that sounded awful.
I want to ask you, have you ever felt what Scott describes? Have you ever felt that your sort of sense of self-worth equates to how much money you have? Because I felt that.
I don't think I as much have money equals identity and self-worth, but I do think for many people there's a sense that money equals security, and so we're all chasing that dollar, which is security. But I think for men it's much stronger. I don't relate to what you're talking about. Do you think so?
Yeah, so this is, I've never actually asked a woman this before, but it's the number one topic of conversation in my group chat with my boys.
What did you say? Zoned out for a second. I was thinking about ramens. I get hungry right now, bro.
So do you think
close. What did she say?
Something about money tying into character or identity, whatever the fuck.
That money equals security and self-worth, but I do think for many people there's a sense that money equals security, and so we're all chasing that dollar, which is security. But I think for men it's much stronger. I don't relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I believe so. Like Scott just said, I feel like Like money, I just feel like a bum, I feel like a loser. I feel like even if the money is not like as depleted as it should be, I still feel like I'm not doing enough because of just I have my certain quota that I have to hit. And if I'm not there, I'm just like a loser. And really, everything revolves around money. Like literally everything. Whether you gotta pay for gas, whether you gotta buy food, whether you gotta buy clothes, whether you wanna go on vacation. Really, everything revolves around money. That's why, like, when they also say like money don't bring happiness. I mean, it doesn't, but it brings mental peace.
Security.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've never actually asked a woman this before, but it's the number one topic of conversation in my group chat with my boys is how much are we working Saturday and Sunday to make more money, make ourselves more successful. And then one of my friends, who's not in my group chat, but one of my extended friends went through financial hardship, and he's in the lead up to starting a family, etc. And he went through a moment where he was going to be declared bankrupt, and he was inconsolably depressed. His partner was fine; she was kind of like, we'll get through this. But he actually said to me, he goes, I've never felt more worthless, and that's something that I've heard echoed by many men who go through sort of economic financial roller coasters.
Yeah, that was actually one of the stats in that report, the Lost Boys report. Richard Reeves talks about this. I think that's actually where it comes from. So Richard Reeves says that the number one cause of death for young men under 15 is suicide, and that men in general, the things that they describe in their notes when they commit suicide are these words, worthless and useless. And so if men feel like their identity and their value and their worth comes from money, when they don't have money or they can't be a provider and they're sort of on the edge of society, then they're literally opting out, sometimes with their lives. Okay, I want to take the metaphorical iPad and ask you guys some questions. Because I feel like I've kind of said what I want to say about this topic, but I'm sure there are just millions of people that look up to both of you as symbols of masculinity. Scott, this is true, right? Moms talk to you all the time and say, how can I help my son? And so, like, there's things that I want to know because this topic is the thing I'm most passionate about. I want to spend the next 5 years really helping with this supply problem and the mating gap, but I don't know that men will listen to me. But they will listen to you, so I want to learn from you. So if you could teach a dating boot camp to all guys and even talk about what you would have them unlearn, what are some of those messages?
I would, a dating boot camp.
Yeah, or being a human boot camp. Let's just
We
extend
would have module 1, comedy.
Ooh.
Because the only thing that got me laid when I was broke was I was like slightly funny sometimes.
Yeah,
Like,
great.
I could be broken funny.
Okay,
and
this
I'd
could be
have
improv. This
some
could
set,
be just this. Yeah, keep going.
Something around confidence, which is just standing. I noticed that posture correlates to dating success. So I'd have men learn to stand up straight and to control their posture and take up more space. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, which is don't be shriveled. So like standing up straight, which is obviously one of the things that going to the gym does. It kind of pulls you out a little bit as well. Typical, but going out of fashion, male manners. Open up the door. I still open up the door for my girlfriend every single day, even though apparently they went through a phase where that was seen as like not okay to do. But I've always taken great pride in it. And funnily enough, opening up the door for my partner makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. I'm like doing it for selfish reasons. It makes me feel like a man. It makes me feel strong. Also, like when a bus comes, I love the fact that I put my hand across my girlfriend. That for me makes me feel like a man. I love that when we cross the road, I'm the one that's looking out. I love that I stand on the roadside of the pavement, etc. So I teach men these kind of behaviours. And definitely going to the gym. And then, as Scott said, like entrepreneurship or making some money, that would be central to my boot camp. I'll give you one more. It would be conflict resolution. And this goes to like the emotional empathy point. One thing that I struggle with, or at least I struggled with until my girlfriend coached me, and I did the podcast so many times that I learned some lessons, is just how to deal with conflict when the sparring partner is a woman. Because men in conflict, we have a certain way typically, but learning the skill of hearing and understanding your partner, and which is very difficult. And like, well, listen, this might just be me. I find it incredibly difficult to sit and to listen to my partner for 90 minutes when she tells me indirectly all the things I did wrong. I've had to learn the skill of doing that. And I sat here with someone who's a psychologist and said, they said to me, if you're a man, you have to learn the skill of sitting down for 90 minutes a week and letting your partner tell you everything that they're feeling and going through. With my boys, we don't do that. Yeah. When we go on holiday, it is total silence. We're eating fucking Pringles and watching the game. But when I'm with my partner, and I'm sure when she's with her friends, it's talking. So I've developed the skill now, just like sitting and listening. And then sometimes I take notes. And then sometimes I repeat back to her what she just said to me. And this is totally alien to me. And it hurts when I do it. It like hurts. And I find it so uncomfortable. Like I find it really, really uncomfortable to do that.
Even though this is something you spend hours doing for
100%.
your job.
It's so unnatural to me.
But you've worked on it.
I've worked on it, yeah. I did it like 3 days ago. My girlfriend said, I was traveling around the world. Yeah. We were in, I don't even know what country we were in. She goes, I've got some things I want to talk about. Can we put some time in the calendar? Mm-hmm. Do you have 60 minutes? I've gone off stage in Sweden. I put in 60 minutes into my calendar. She video calls me and she talks to me for about 45 minutes. I don't have anything to say on that. And I just sit there and listen. And in between the lines, it's like things I could do better. She's not blaming me or anything, but it's hard for me. My boys would never do that. Our friendship isn't contingent on those things. So that's what I would say.
I love that.
Like, I don't know if that you relate to that, but
I think about this a lot with my boys, and I think kind of the 3 legs of the stool are provider. I'm probably over-focused on the economics. That doesn't necessarily mean making a lot of money, but listening, disciplined, responsible about it. Developing skills, certification, having a plan. Right? Don't be the guy ordering a bottle of Grey Goose at 2 a.m. Like, I'm going home because I gotta get up. You know, I have a plan, and I have a vision for how I'm going to be a good provider. Protector, good manners. Your default system is protection. You constantly speak well of people behind their backs. You hear someone being critical of someone else. Your inclination is to defend them.
You don't demonize special interest groups. Your default setting, if somebody needs help anywhere or is being threatened, it's so heartbreaking to me that women feel unsafe when they see men. When they see a group of men coming down the street, surveys show women are inclined to cross the street. And it just feels like from an early age, men need to be taught. Anyone smaller, anyone more vulnerable than you, anyone in a special interest group, your default is protection. That's what men do. Think about masculinity, a soldier, a cop, a fireman. What do they do? At the end of the day, they protect. That is your default operating system as a move to protection.
I don't know.
And then procreator. I think you should want to have sex. I think you should be willing to take risks. I tell my boys, I did this for a while, they can't get back in the house unless they talk to a stranger. And my oldest, no problem. Hey, what's going on? My youngest, not as easy. Just go up and pet their dog. I think there are so many men out there that have no willingness or ability to open, to just say hi. Where are you from? To just open. And to want a romantic relationship is a wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Modulate your porn. Decide, ask yourself, would you want to have sex with you? Get strong, get fit, get your act together, smell nice, groom. If you can't dress well, find someone who can dress you, and initiate contact and want to have a relationship with someone. That's a wonderful thing. That mojo is the most purposeful, wonderful thing in my life, is that I'm raising two patriotic, decent men. And it started with me really wanting to have sex with this woman I saw at the pool at the Raleigh Hotel, right? And that sounds crass. It's like, I looked around, I'm really attracted to this woman, so I'm going to take a risk. In the middle of the day without the benefit of alcohol, I'm going to walk up and introduce myself to her and another guy, and the woman she's with. Hey, where are you guys from? And then 18 months later, our first son was born, middle name Raleigh, after the hotel. Take risk. Want to have mating opportunities. You're a provider, your default system is a protector, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a procreator.
I love everything you said, and then one thing that was going through my head as you said it was, it feels really sad that in this moment in time we have to tell people to become procreators. Don't you feel like there's something sick in our society if that has to be taught? Evolutionarily, all of our software is towards procreation. Like, that is how we are wired. Yet people are so sick from the food that they eat, from all the medications that people are on, from all the pornography, from all the technology, that you literally have to teach your sons the importance of procreation. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm really freaked out by all of this stuff, because we are at a point in society where in South Korea, of 100 people of childbearing age, they are going to produce 12 grandchildren based on a 0.7 birth rate. And the fact that you talk about the P of procreation, like, I'm so worried about our society.
It's 60% of 30-year-olds 4 years ago used to have a kid, and that's 27%.
So when I was on the plane on the way here, I told this woman who was sitting next to me what I was going to be talking about. And her gut reaction was, oh, why do we have to worry about that? Women are doing better than men. Like, great, let us do that for the first time in history. Like, her gut reaction was, why is this a problem? Then I started telling her these stats around lowest marriage rate. We're approaching the lowest marriage rate in U.S. history. The birth rate has gone down 20% in 20 years. And she didn't know these numbers. And I feel like people are afraid to talk about this topic because they think it's a zero-sum game where when men lose, women win, and vice versa. Yeah. But right now, we're all losing.
There's huge economic impact, too, because it used to be 12 people working age to support every senior. Now it's 3 to 1. If we don't have kids, we're going to go into economic decline.
Yeah, South Korea is replacing its nursery schools with its nursing homes. Like, they are the anti-example for us, and I think people need to be paying attention.
By 2050, about 40% of the population will be senior citizens, and the labour force could have halved within the next 40 years. The Bank of Korea warns that if current trends persist, the Korean economy could begin contracting in 10 years' time. And this presents a national service risk as the country relies on its conscripted military, and this will fall by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people by 2025. But half, oh my gosh, could fall from 250,000 troops to 125,000 troops. Politics is the last thing I wanted to talk about, and how this sort of intertwines with everything we've talked about today. Obviously, Trump is now in power, and as we saw in the data and we touched on earlier on, young men have become more right-leaning and more conservative than ever before. The left hasn't necessarily offered the best vision of masculinity for young men, as something Scott's talked about previously. I was wondering, I think this morning in the hotel, I was wondering, how is the left going to get men back? Is that possible? Because the vision of masculinity, this is something Scott's talked about, that the left portrays is not, doesn't seem to be in line with all the things we've just described that we feel intuitively as men. The things we think are important, like economic viability, being strong,
I'll let Scott go first.
Well, on the right, they've conflated masculinity with coarseness and cruelty. The two kind of role models, President Trump, who in my opinion demonstrates a lack of grace and a lack of empathy and a lack of kindness, and Elon Musk is currently being sued by 2 women for sole custody of their kid because he hasn't seen the kid. Those are the role models we want for young men. And on the left, their vision of masculinity is act more like a woman. I don't think that's helpful either. I went to the Democratic National Convention, and there's a parade of special interest groups. Everyone was represented, except for the group that needs the most representation right now, in my view, and that is young men. If you go to the DNC website, they list 16 special interest groups and they say who we serve. They call it out, who we serve. Asian Pacific Islanders, seniors, the disabled, immigrants, Black Americans. And I added it up. It's 74% of the U.S. population. And when you say you're actively advocating for 74%, you're not advocating for 74%, you're discriminating against the 26%. And who are the 26%? Young men.
Is this a consequence of DEI?
I think that's part of it. I think there's been so many groups that have been discriminated against. And the way I would just loosely describe the Democratic Party is we have the right ideas and we just where women have gotten a raw deal, so they need advantage. Gays have been persecuted. People, non-whites have had. We're 12 black people 60 years ago in Princeton, Harvard, and Yale combined. That was a problem. This year, more than 60% of Harvard's freshman class identify as non-white. So I think we got to get out of identity politics. But the notion, it largely came from the left. This notion of toxic masculinity. There's no such thing, because there's violence. There's people who are criminals. There's people who aren't kind. That means they're not masculine. Masculinity is being a protector, a provider, a procreator, and the Democratic Party seems to believe that leaning into anything around your advantage of being male in terms of your strength, your kindness, you're wanting to procreate, you're initiating sexual contact or sexual romantic interest is somehow a threat and somehow toxic. I just think they've sent absolutely the wrong signal. And into that void has stepped basically thinly veiled misogyny. It is just so ugly. Trump flew right into it. The reason Trump won this election, in my view, is the groups that pivoted hardest from blue to red, 2020 to 2024, were Latinos, who were sick of being categorized by their identity. But numbers 2 and 3 were people under the age of 30, especially males, who are not doing very well and feel like Donald Trump feels their pain, and women age 45 to 64. And my thesis is that's their mothers. Because if your son isn't doing well, you don't care about territorial sovereignty in Ukraine or transgender rights. You just want to change. My son isn't doing well.
Those are the people that whisper to me in the streets about these conversations. It's the 40 to 55-year-old mother who has a son, who doesn't feel like she can speak up, but says to me privately that she's worried about her kids. And actually, we had some mothers write in, all of which wanted to stay anonymous, saying this exact same thing. They've got an 18-year-old son, they're super concerned. They've got a 16-year-old son, the son looks lost. As the stats show from the report, they're not leaving home in the same way that women, their daughters leave home, but they don't know what to do about it. So for those parents that are listening now, we can't change society. What would you recommend a parent of a young boy does?
First thing is forgive yourself. There's this natural part of a separation where, and I think this is true of girls, but especially boys, where to make the separation easier, we don't get along with our parents in our senior year in high school, and that doesn't mean your son doesn't love you. That doesn't mean your son's not going to figure it out. But to forgive yourself, but going back to more actionable things, trying to get men involved in his life, and then dumb stuff like my mom made sure I was in Boy Scouts. My mom, when I got cut from the high school basketball and football team, she enrolled me in city leagues so I could continue to play sports. But it was mostly she wasn't sure that I had men in my life, and I think that was really, really important for me. But I would just say that I feel like I need to coach men more. Like what I say to boys, one of the first things I say to boys, I had lunch with someone who's a fairly famous news anchor and her son, and I asked the mom to excuse. They started going at it, and I asked the mom to excuse herself, and I said, "Mom, you realize this is the only person in your life ever that wants you to be more successful than you. You just got to cut this shit out. This woman's not your enemy." And I heard that, and I was a bit ashamed because I remember being such an asshole to my mother, So I think I could say that to him because I could look him in the eyes and say, "What the fuck are you doing?" Mm-hmm. So I just think that male involvement for single mothers, and I think men are really willing to get involved, whether it's someone down the street, a coach, a sibling, your brother, whatever it is. But I do think, again, the research shows that the point of failure is when a boy loses a male role model. And also to forgive yourself. Being a single parent with a son, I think that's hard. I just think it's hard.
Logan, you've got some questions I can see.
Oh, yeah. I do have some questions for Scott, but I would love for you to answer them too. So one of them is, what is something about being a man that you learned growing up that you have had to unlearn? And I'm wondering specifically in how you're raising your sons to avoid some of those things.
I think a great proxy for masculinity and manhood is, and Richard Reeves introduced me to this, and I think it's so powerful, and that is surplus value. It's not about a religious ceremony. It's not about having sex. It's not about an age. It's about getting to the point of surplus value. You create more tax revenue than you absorb. I say to my boys, you're negative value. Look at all the resources going into you. Look at all the love. We love you so much more than you love us. Your teachers are spending all this time and energy, and you aren't giving anything back. At some point, that needs to pivot. So creating more tax revenue, noticing people's life, registering more complaints from other people than you are complaining, protecting people, adding surplus value. So, these notions that, and I wasn't that guy. I wanted more from everyone else than I was giving. I was the guy that, when someone honked at me, I was the guy that sped up and honked back to restore the universe to its place. If a ticket counter agent at the airline counter was rude to me, I needed to get back in their face to restore harmony to the universe because I'm a fucking baller. And we realize that being a man is occasionally taking a hit, right? It's having surplus value. It's noticing people's lives. It's listening to complaints. It's occasionally thinking, well, maybe this person coming off in traffic, I don't know what's going on with them. Maybe their kid has diabetes. Maybe they're going through a divorce. It's adding more value than you're taking. And until the age of 40, I looked at every relationship. Am I getting more out of this than I'm giving? And if I'm not, I'm out. And what you realize is good business partnerships, you add as much or more value than your partners. Good relationships, you witness the person's life. You make them feel fucking awesome. If you leave this world a little bit in debt, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Or a little bit, if the world's in debt to you, that's the win. And I used to think as a young man, that meant I needed to exit the relationship. I'm not getting more money or services than I'm giving. I'm not getting more kindness than I'm not giving. I'm not getting more hot experiences with this romantic partner than they're giving me. I'm out. No, it's the other way around. Being a man is surplus value.
Yeah, I've never thought about that before, but it's so true that, like, as a man, you should aspire to be considered generous. And actually, the first time someone called me generous was like such an unbelievably wonderful compliment to me, because it means that people see you as someone that's giving things. But to answer your question, for me, it was just a willingness to express my emotions when I'm struggling. That's always been the difficult thing for me, especially because of everything I've said earlier about wanting to be strong and to be a provider. There are going to be moments where, regardless of how well you play the game of life, you're going to struggle. And I did not have the tools. I still really don't have great tools for this, but to turn to someone and say, I'm really struggling with this, and not to feel emasculated. And I would say that because, as a man, pretty much the only person you have in your life, typically, that you can turn to is your romantic partner. That's also the last person you want to turn to and say you're struggling, because, again, for me, that felt like I was being emasculated. So I remember the day very vividly when I was like 30 years old, turning to my girlfriend and like running the experiment of letting her know that I was struggling with something and how difficult that was. But the only reason I did it was because I almost felt like I had no fucking choice. I like got to the point where I was like, I need to tell someone this. And she was the only person. And I still don't think I tell my guy friends everything. Wow. I would tell them some things, but I don't think I tell them everything. And when I look at the stats around mental health and depression, which are absolutely horrific, and some of these quotes that we had from some of the guys that wrote into the show, this guy Liam said, for me the biggest challenge that young men face today is I feel like I'm striving for meaning, but I can't find it anywhere. I struggle to even sleep at night with some form of substance because my brain is constantly firing different scenarios at me that I'm failing in my life. When I'm alone with my thoughts, it's like having a never-ending lesson about how useless I am and how I need to change everything in my life. And the hardest part is I can't even tell anybody this because I would feel weak. And then this guy, Jeffrey, wrote in and said, my entire life, I've never felt like I was good enough. Like I could never earn my place in society. And even though I think I've achieved some things by the age of 18, I still feel like deep inside I will never be enough and I'm still not enough and I can't tell anybody. And I think that's a problem that's quite unique to men. It might be a problem unique to my upbringing, but I just don't have the tools. So when I look at the stats around depression and men killing themselves, 75% of suicides in the UK are men, and 75% of the worldwide are men. And suicide, as you said, I think earlier, is the leading cause of death amongst young men in 50 countries. Yeah, if you feel that meaningless and you feel that worthless and you don't have anyone to console about it, to maybe tell you that you're wrong, you know.
That's why when Scott said that you don't necessarily buy the research that women are looking for someone who's emotionally intelligent, fine, then don't do it for your partner, do it for yourself.
Yeah.
I just saw the stand-up special by Kumail Nanjiani. I'm sure it'll come out on streaming soon, but the last 20 minutes was pretty incredible. It basically turned from like sort of silly stand-up into kind of like his TED Talk. So he told this amazing story about how one day he was speaking to the press and he said, I started to go to therapy when there were a bunch of bad reviews about my movie because I realized so much of my identity was tied up in external factors. And this turned into headlines around the world that said bad reviews land Kumail Nanjiani in therapy. And he was really frustrated by this. So in the stand-up special, he took the 5 most popular things that people said criticizing him and he broke down each one. So for example, one of them was, oh, boo-hoo, poor, super rich movie star feels sad about bad reviews. We should all feel sad for him. And he's like, no, you don't have to feel sad for me, but I can feel sad for me. And he went through all these things. And he talked about his therapy journey and how before therapy, he thought, I just don't experience negative emotions. I don't experience sadness. And through therapy, he understood, I experience sadness all the time, but I don't allow myself to feel it. So it just comes out as anger. So he told a story about talking to his dad on the phone. His dad had just been in a car accident, but was fine. And then he helped his dad through that experience. And then a few hours later, he's like, where the fuck is my Ninja Turtle t-shirt? And it's like, he needed therapy to explain to him, he's not upset about the t-shirt, he's upset about his dad. But I think that the fact that he, in his 40s or however old he is, had to learn that, it makes me feel like everyone needs to learn that. If it's not for your romantic partner, then it's for yourself. Because life sucks. If you can't cry, you can't express emotions, you don't have people to talk to. And so forget about attracting a mate. Just not killing yourself. Just being a happier person. I think we just need more room for men to express emotions.
The first time I went to a therapist was when I was about 30, 31. And I put it off for so fucking long for this reason. Because every part of it made me feel like emasculated. And as a man, you're like, I know I can deal with everything myself and I've got this. Like I said, when the bus comes, I put my hand in front of my girlfriend. I'm always the protector. So when you find yourself in a position like these men who've written into the show, where you feel meaningless or you feel hopeless or there's some other challenge in your life, you think it's your job to fix. Well, I thought it was like my job to fix. And also like, maybe because I've been a CEO since the age of 18, I'm always like holding full for everybody. So you learn to like keep a fucking straight face. Right. The business is on fire. We have no money to pay 170 people's wages and it's Friday and they're expecting, like you learn the skill of like numbness and that doesn't serve you when you're trying to resolve something. And this is why I think porn, gambling addiction become the avenue because there's not another avenue to sort of take pressure off the pressure valve. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult.
The email you just read from that young man, I've stopped, it sounds crass, I can't handle the emails I get anymore. I'm getting so many emails from young men who are just, you read an email like that and you just like, it's devastating. I haven't gotten over the death of my father, I'm living alone, I've become addicted to, you just hear the shit, like I know I have value to add, I just can't figure it out. Or, there's just so many of these men out there, and I think a lot of it is, I was like the economics, I'm like, we've got to figure out vocational programming. I think we should have national service so people feel a sense of identity and connection and purpose. Some of the lowest levels of young adult depression are in Israel, despite all the existential threats, because they all serve in the IDF for 2 to 3 years. I think we need more freshman seats at colleges. I think we need more third places where people, I think a lot of it comes down to economics and policy programs. I think there's a lot we can do to help young men, but in the U.S., it's now 77% moving to 80% suicides. It's 4 to 1. If there was any special interest group, you go into a morgue in America and 5 people die by suicide, 4 are men.
if that was any other special interest group versus the control group, they'd weigh in with programs. But because of the enormous advantage I registered, and let's be honest, it was enormous. Basically, all prosperity in America, which was unprecedented, was crammed into 30% of the population, basically white males. So we had staggering advantage. And now 19-year-old males are paying the price for my advantage. There's really a lack of empathy for them. And what I do think is hopeful is that mothers and women in society now realize that the country and women are not going to continue to flourish if men are flailing. And it finally feels like we're having a real program. The governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, has said that his focus for his administration, as the governor of a state, a liberal state, is going to be on helping the state's young men. I mean, that took such fucking balls for him to say that. And you know what? The populace received it well, because on the ground, people are feeling it. They're really feeling how much young men are struggling. So I'm actually quite hopeful that we turned a corner in terms of the dialogue. Because when I started talking about this 4 or 5 years ago, right away, oh, your hair wasn't on fire when women were, I mean, just, oh, there was such a gag reflex. It has changed so dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years.
Where do we send these guys?
That's a great question. And I wish I had a list of resources. I'm trying to assemble it around, all right. I mean, I'm involved with it because it's difficult to discern between ordinary young adult or adolescent problems and when a kid's suicidal. I wish I had some sort of AI filter that would go, this kid needs help right away. Like, here are some resources, here are some men's groups. You know, and I do a shitty job. I can't talk to all of them. A couple of them, I take a lazy way. I say, here's $500 to BetterHelp online therapy. I'll pay for your first 4 sessions.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest, I don't know.
I mean, I think we should put together this list of resources. And I feel like there are good guys out there. I put Chris Williamson in this group. I put both of you out there. Podcasts are how a lot of modern wisdom is being expressed right now, right? You don't go to church. You get your sermon through your AirPods. So, like, who are the guys that are saying healthy things? And I feel like if we can fill their ears with the healthy messages of masculinity, we are taking away the space and the attention from the people that are really profiting from these negative messages. I think we need a place to send the people who email.
Yeah, and I appreciate the offer, and we should do this, but we should have a list that says, all right, what are you struggling with, and here are some resources or things you should think about.
But even what you both said to my answer, or to my question around, like, what's the boot camp, or what would you tell guys, like, that's not a crazy list. I think it's like for a lot of these guys to have you as sort of a male role model of, like, go to the gym, make money, be kind, look out for others. Like, I just feel like that can be condensed into, and maybe that's what your new book is, but, like, truly I think people are looking for a script. With the lack of religion, lack of institution, we've lost all these scripts that tell people what to do. Let's write a new script.
It's on you, brother. You got more tread on you. Look at all these cameras.
I mean, somebody's going to watch this and pull it together into all of your advice, but I'm just saying.
I like the idea of a collective.
It needs to get out there, because if you don't fill the space, somebody else will, and they already are, and it's not the messages that you want to have the next population, the next generation having.
I agree. We'll talk about this.
Okay, 1, 2, 3,
Man.
Anything else you wanted to ask us? I know Scott to hear of yours if you've got any questions you want to ask.
No, I'm just really glad that we're having this conversation. I feel like maybe I wouldn't have had this conversation a year ago. I do think the tide is turning. I think the title of the report, as Lost Boys, is very helpful. And I just want to end with the message that women don't have to do worse when men do better, and vice versa. And let's raise up everyone so that we're all thriving. And yeah, let's help these lost boys and also help women.
Any closing points from this slide, Scott?
Oh, well, just a message to young people in general. The arc of happiness is a smile, and that is kind of 0 to 18 is prom, football, making out. It's generally pretty happy. The least happy years for people are usually kind of 18 to 45. Economic stress, relationships are hard. Probably somebody you love a great deal gets sick and dies. And if you're struggling, what I would just say is, don't be afraid to reach out for help, but also realize that if you're not a member of parliament and you don't have a fragrance named after you, it doesn't mean you're failing. And to forgive yourself and to recognize that those are tough years. When my first kid was born, I tell this story a lot. It's supposed to be angels singing and bright lights. I felt nothing but shame. I was 42 and I was broke. I had put everything in my tech company. Great financial recession came along.
42.
My account called me and said, you're worth a negative $2 million. If you look at your debts, you're worth negative $2 million. And about that time, my oldest son had the poor judgment to come rotating on my girlfriend. And all I felt with this kid was shame. Like, I have failed. I failed myself. And now I failed on an entirely new dimension as a provider and a father. That was the first thing I felt when my son was born. And I wrote about it. And I can't tell you how many men I heard from. That all I felt when I had my first kid or kids was a sense of embarrassment and that I was already failing.
That energy that you felt at that moment, did you channel it into something, or were you tempted?
Nausea. I was in the delivery room, and they were more worried about me, and they thought it was because I was grossed out by birthing. It was because I was so ashamed. I just immediately felt like, oh my God, how did I put myself in a position where I'm a terrible provider on day one? I just felt a tremendous amount of shame. And I think most people, when you talk to them, at some point have felt really down and really like embarrassed. And I just don't think that's anything unusual. And you want to forgive yourself. You want to say to yourself, I can add value to a company. I can make someone very happy, and try and surround yourself with people that make you feel good about yourself. And every day, just little baby steps, write some things down, try and exercise, try and eat well. I can tell when I'm getting depressed, and I have this method of getting out of it. I call it SCAFA, S-C-A-F-A, sweat, It's like resets my operating system. Clean, try and eat really well at home. Abstinence. And when I say abstinence from pot and alcohol, both of which I love, and I'm really good at them. They add value to my life, but when I'm not feeling good, I take them out of my life because whatever's going on with my senses, I just don't mess with them. F is family. I find being around my boys is really important. And then A is affection. I find affection being around, even if my dog's laying on me or my boys. I'll say to my boys, let's watch TV, and my boys instinctively throw their legs on mine. Not necessarily sex, but affection with my partner. Those are the things that get me out of a dark place. So try and figure out, if you can, what things help you get out of a dark place. But recognize everyone struggles. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't reach out and find help, but everything online is telling you should be in a Gulfstream and partying in St. Bart's. No, that's not the real world. And try and build a support system, and also forgive yourself. Happiness is a smile. 20 to 45 is usually, it's full of a lot of joy, but it's also full of a lot of, oftentimes a lot of anxiety.
Do you go to therapy?
No.
Have you ever been?
I did. My first marriage, we went to marriage counseling, and after the first session, we decided to get divorced, so I'm a little traumatized by therapy. Yeah. And he cut right to it. Saved me real money.
Yeah. Oh, Stephen, I wanted to add one more thing. I think an underappreciated resource for men for building empathy is reading fiction books. So I'm in a book club. I read fiction all the time. Fiction builds a lot of empathy because you are truly inside the mind of somebody else for 200 or 300 pages. When I talk to guys, they so rarely read fiction. Do you read any fiction?
Not at all.
A lot of guys that I talk to, they say, oh, I read nonfiction. And there's so many lists online of like the 100 nonfiction books to get your MBA. And it's like we're all reading so much nonfiction on our phone at all times. Read a book of fiction. Get inside the head of somebody else. Get inside the head of a woman. I think that for $0 at the local library, you can actually become a better person.
Do you know what's interesting though? There's a reason why men read books about how to make money.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to everything we said. If I said to my boys, we're going to start reading fiction, my friends read stuff that's going to help them build a business, make money, or gain muscle mass.
Yeah, but can't I convince? What if you're single and I'm going to say read this fiction and you're going to get laid? Like, why can't we just reframe and change the narrative on fiction?
Right.
I just feel like there's so many examples of times that I haven't really known what's going on with the group, and then I read a book about that group, and I'm not an expert in them, but I can think about them more. And I just feel like, look, if you are not having success with women and you don't have any women in your life, read a fucking book by a woman.
Just a quick anecdote. When I was a senior in high school and a freshman in college, I remember thinking, I'm strange. I remember feeling very insecure about my own psychological makeup, and that didn't help. And then I read a bunch of John Irving novels, The World According to Garp, Cider House Rules, and the people in it were just so fucking strange. It made me feel better about myself. I'm like, oh, there's other weirdos out there. So what you say really resonates. It made me feel less self-conscious about how unusual I thought I was. It just dawned on me that was a big help for me.
Wow.
TikTok is not going to give you the empathy that spending 300 pages inside the mind of a person different from yourself will.
Thank you both. For so many reasons. Scott, you're actually writing a book at the moment, which we're going to publish shortly. We've talked about it a few times. What is the title of that book and what is it about?
Well, I've determined, I don't know how it is for you with books, but basically your publisher does nothing and then obsesses over the title. That's what I've had.
That is very true.
So I had it work. It was supposed to be originally about masculinity, and I realized that I don't have the skills or the domain expertise to summarize masculinity. So I changed it to work in progress, notes on becoming a man. And I just talk about stories that I've written about some of the things we talked about today, and try and use masculinity as a code. I think everyone needs a code, whether it's the military, the religion, their family values. And I think masculinity can serve as a code if defined correctly for young men. But it's just a series of like stories about things I've gone through, some of my many ways I've failed and what I learned about trying to become a man, trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good partner.
When is it published? When is it going to be published?
It'll be on the fall.
Wonderful. Okay. And Logan, you have an incredible book, which is the book on this subject matter called How to Not Die Alone, the Surprising Science That Will Help You Find Love. And what does someone discover in that book?
Well, it's really about understanding the blind spots that hold people back from finding love and then making a plan to overcome them.
I'm going to link all of Scott's books and all of Logan's book in the comments below for everybody to read. I also wanted to say a huge thank you to the Centre of Social Justice for making this report, because it's caused a huge conversation in the UK and now around the world around lost boys. We have a closing question on this podcast with the last guest. Leave a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're leaving it for. And the question I'm going to ask both of you is, Logan, what are you most scared of?
I'm most scared of losing my husband. Because he has had a brush with death. He had very serious bone cancer. I feel like we've just been through such hard stuff with him medically that right now I'm here today with you. He's climbing. I was just thinking, what happens if something happens to him with climbing? And we have a 1-year-old daughter. And so maybe the most obvious answer is something that happened to my daughter, but for me it's really something that happened to my husband.
Scott, what are you most scared of?
The way I took that was, what am I most worried about? I'm really worried about an epidemic of loneliness. From a societal standpoint, that people are starting to believe they can disengage from life. And that leads to anxiety and depression and polarization that makes the world a less safe place. Personally, my fear has always been the same. I'm always worried that my kind of selfish instincts manifest in an ugly way and I end up alone and old. That's my biggest fear, that I end up dying under bright lights, surrounded by strangers. That's my biggest fear.
Because your selfish instincts manifest. You do something wrong in your relationship, or you fuck up your...
Yeah, just always. My dad's basically alone at 95, and some of his lower character quality attributes I see in myself, and that's a fear. My fear is that, end up dying surrounded by strangers.
What are you scared of?
What am I scared of? I always said living a life that I'm not happy, like, living. Like, I want to die knowing that, like, I did everything that I wanted to do. No regrets. Wishing that I should have did something when I was this age. Yeah. That's always going to be my regret. Well, it won't be. Because I'm going to make sure I get there. Live a life that's fulfilled. But,
Steve, do yours.
The first thing that comes to mind is something happening to my partner. I just can't imagine. I just see her as this like perfect human being that was like this angel. So thinking, I just can't imagine ever finding anybody comparable. So something happening to her, finding out she was sick, I think is the first thing that comes to mind. It comes to mind actually above anything in my life. And then I do have a little bit of Scott's fear, which he expressed there, which is that I will make bad decisions based on, just say it, just like the temptation of life, and that lead me to be a bad father, not be around for my kids, not be able to be around for my kids, and be lonely and old and rich and miserable. It's like kind of a fear I've always had. It's interesting I said the word temptation.
Yeah.
Because in the world, there's a lot of temptation.
There is.
You want to talk about a lot. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you to you in particular because you've been one of the leading voices in this fight.
That's a generous thing to say.
No, but it's absolutely not generous because it's absolutely true. When people think of this subject matter, they think of you. And you also stuck your neck out and started speaking about the subject long before it was okay to speak about the subject.
Thank you.
And you spoke about it in such an eloquent, hilarious, wise way that both sides listened. And I think you're one of the key people on this subject matter who's even allowed these kind of reports to exist. Because I'm actually not sure that if it wasn't for you,
does he have a
reports like
PhD
this
or
would exist.
something?
I think you're wrong, but I'll take it.
I think I'm absolutely right.
He's
Like, I actually think
getting
I'm right
PhD.
because the reach you've had on the subject matter is hundreds and hundreds of millions of people across the clips, across the podcasts you've done. And like I said, listen, there wasn't a lot of people saying it before you could say it. You've actually given cover to a lot of people. You've even given cover to me. And it's because of the
like
wonderful
this.
science
It
and
makes me
art
wanna
that
keep
you
going to
deploy
sleep.
as it relates to communication.
Back to sleep.
Logan, thank you as well. Because you've made the decision as well to lend your voice to this subject matter, which is complicated and it's like problematic and it's full of like landmines, it feels like. But you're adding an incredibly important perspective, one that comes from tremendous research, lived experience, and you're a very important, I think, individual in this fight to speak and to sort of create a better world for our young and lost boys.
Thank you. Can I thank Scott too?
Thank
Just to make you uncomfortable.
Go on.
Okay. Yeah. So as I've been talking to people about my interest in this, the first thing they always say is, "Oh, the stuff that Scott Galloway is talking about." And if you weren't talking about it, I don't think they would have anyone to point to.
But I just need. I feel like a plagiarist because the majority of my good data comes from Richard Reeves.
I know that that's true, but the point is you are the most effective communicator in the world right now. Your ability to turn stories and facts into persuasion is something that no one else is doing. So you're taking Richard's data and combining your lived experience, and you're getting this message out there in a way that no one else is doing.
Thank you. That's generous. Thank you.
And no one else could reach both sides in such an effective way, which I think is really important. So again, thank you, Scott. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Really appreciate it. We launched this conversation cards and it's all that.
Tea. I need to get up. My butt hurts.